and start
No, we'll
early.
be okay. Sam will get it up at the right time.
Welcome, 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 everybody. We thank you so much for taking the time out to join us for the Jamaica Midlife Health Society, JMHS's first CME accredited Zoom meeting of 2025. I am Sam from Allgate Solutions, and we thank you so much for joining us. Today's theme, maximizing my brain health slash capacity before, during, and beyond midlife. Today, you've joined us on Zoom for a wonderful, wonderful session. And I hand you over now to our moderator, who will be giving you the opening remarks for the first session, Miss Magdalena Cooper de News. And she is a part of the JMHS executive. Magdalena, over to you.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome, everyone. 169 of you. And those who are joining us from the UK, happy Mother's Day. I hope you're enjoying your Mother's Day in the evening in the UK and anywhere else in the world where it's Mother's Day, except for Jamaica. Welcome to everyone. My co-host today is Kellyanne. And Kellyanne, how is the brain doing this afternoon?
Well, Madalena, morning, good afternoon, everybody. A little bit stressed, but you know those days of the senior moments.
Yes.
So I think this is a very good meeting that I should be part of. That I'm part.
Yes.
I'm happy to be part of.
Most definitely.
How's your brain?
My brain is just excited about this presentation and the opportunity to learn more about the brain because it's something that we don't talk about a lot in terms of our body parts. So it's really good to actually be on this program and to be a co-host with you or co-moderator with you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Our next item on the program is that of the prayer from Mr. Alton Lawrence, and he will take us in prayer, followed by him. After him, there will be the welcome and greetings from Dr. William Brown, and then introduction of the guest speaker. Those items will follow unannounced. Over to you, Mr. Alton Lawrence.
Are you able to hear me?
Loud and
yes,
clear.
we can hear you. Loud and clear.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wish to extend special greetings first to the president of the Jamaica Midlife Health Society, to its executives, members, and guest speakers, and wish you all a mindful afternoon. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are in awe of this lovely day that you have made. And thank you for the health to appreciate its beauty. We accept, Lord, the challenges that encourage us to grow in resilience, in faith, and courage. As you have reminded us in your words, Lord, that you have not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Indeed, Lord, we thank you for the Jamaica Midlife Health Society, its founders and executives that administrate its daily functions. We ask that you bless this noble institution as it strives to improve the lives of our citizens, and that you be the driving force, Lord, behind the success of its vision and mission. Lord, we ask that you bring more excellent light to its cause and relevance and propel it into its rightful place in national prominence. Today, Lord, as we gather to explore and empower ourselves in the knowledge of maximizing brain health and capacity, we lay claim to your divine presence, Lord. For when you are in the vessel, we can smile at the storm. When you watch the city, the watchman watches not in vain. Gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you for the capacity and the knowledge by which you have endowed the presenters for this symposium. We ask that you grant them clarity of mind, speech easy to understand, and Lord, wisdom to execute. We thank you, Lord, for the valuable knowledge and insights and indeed breakthroughs that will enhance the health and well-being of the attendees today. Make them instruments of your healing grace, Lord, as you empower this symposium to be a beacon of hope and progress in the area of brain health. For all these mercies and more, we pray and give you thanks. Amen.
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 Thank you very much, Mr. Alton Lawrence. We always like a prayer, and we were hoping that you give us a closing prayer, but we know the time is not possible. Thank you for making the time to sacrifice the time, actually, church time, to come and give us an opening prayer. God bless you. So now I'm supposed to give you the welcome for this function, this event. And I start by saying good afternoon, friends. Friends and colleagues and well-wishers, all attendees, our patron, who unfortunately is not feeling well, but I hope she's listening, Mrs. Marigold Harding, my JMH's executive members, and the family. We also welcome our sponsors, without whom this event would not have been possible financially, you know. And finally, we welcome our presenters who have done extra time apart from their busy schedules to come here this evening and share their knowledge and expertise with us. Today is another opportunity to extend to you all our continuing medical and health awareness through health education as mandated by the Medical Association of Jamaica, under whose auspices we fall. We also fall under the Medical Council of Jamaica. So we are guided by their principles, ethics, and rules and regulations. For this year, we will begin with a topic which is very controversial, very frightening to know, but the truth is the truth, and we shall see the truth versus the myths, and something that would inevitably face us as we traverse this one life that has been given, God-given us to us. Our topic will be maximizing our brain health as we acquire new knowledge for ourselves, for our beloved ones, for our family members and friends. They say an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. If that is true, then we are charting the right and desired pathway towards quality and quantity of a good life. During the past 3 months, our executives have spent countless hours in organizing what we believe will not only be challenging, but also equip you, the attendee, in your future better health. It is never too late for a fresh start. And so we are convinced that your time spent with us here this afternoon would not only be wasted, but rather to empower, to reset, and to re-enlighten you towards better brain health as we prevent or slow such diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, etc., etc. So, on behalf of the JMH's executive and family, I welcome all present and wish for you a great time of learning for better health. Please listen attentively, but relax and enjoy the event at the same time. Thank you all, and welcome. Yes, Magdalena? Hello? Magdalena?
Yes, William, can you
Kellyanne?
introduce our next guest speaker, guest presenter, please?
I was thinking, I don't think I have the information for that. I wasn't giving them, or maybe I missed it. There are so many things to do. But in a nutshell, Professor Morrison, Errol Morrison, who has been one of our beacons of Jamaica health for the last 40 years, maybe 45 years, maybe 50 years, is the person who accepted to open our webinar. And Errol, as we all know, is very approachable, very knowledgeable with diabetes. I'm sure he's bringing the Diabetes Association posse with him today. Very enlightened gentleman, very respected, and has done a lot for us on the health landscape. And we all know he had lost one of our members, founding members, Faye Whitburn, who passed late last year. And I pray that even as we engage with him hereafter, and before, he was very active with us years and years, that God will strengthen him to continue giving us his support with his knowledge and expertise. Prof, if I start to read your CV, I think we'll be here until tomorrow. And persons are just reeling to hear what you have to say. Welcome, Prof, and the crowd is here to listen to you. Thank you very much, Errol. There you go.
William, organizing team, friends all. The last time when I chaired a meeting and I approached the professor for some notes to introduce him, he said, I am Professor XX. The rest is on Google. So, okay, but it's really, a wonderful moment. You mentioned Faye's death, but I'm certainly interested in continuing a close alliance with the Midlife Health Society. And this afternoon's topic of discussion, as you said, is close to my heart. And I thought I was chosen largely because I'm probably a specimen. That may well depict much of what to expect, in these advancing years. But nonetheless, I am sure that over the next couple of hours, what is being discussed, many of us will be taking home to implement. And if we are not finding as quick a set of results as one may expect in terms of some positive impact, I thought I'd just share with you a quick story which could help to, endorse that and strengthen that determination. It was half a century ago, and the late Sir Winston Churchill was invited to be the keynote speaker at a graduation ceremony. The Chancellor, after introducing Sir Winston, invited him to the podium. And Sir Winston got up, went to the podium and said, "Graduates, congratulations, never give up." And Sir Winston went back to his seat. The Chancellor was taken aback, and he went to the mic and said, "Sir, would you like to expand on that a little more?" And Sir Winston said, "Sure." He went back to the podium and said, "Graduates, never, ever give up." So it is in that kind of context that I want to assure you that whilst there's so much uncertainty about the outcomes, even of the various interventions that we may perform, whatever you shall be embarking on, never, ever give up. And if I may just remind us all of that biblical verse in Job, the book of Job, which tells us, man who is born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. He rises like the flower and withers. He is cut down, and like the fleeting shadow, he will not endure. He is no more. And with that comes an understanding of the total deterioration of self. And that self I am now embodying as that brain, which is a controlling center of everything. And let us not forget the brain is no more than about 2% of our total body mass, a little lump of fat. But in it, over 100 billion connecting fibers carrying messages back and forth that allow you to respond, that controls your mood, controls your thoughts, controls your actions, controls your everything. And as time progresses and you get into the latter years, then the fibers begin to diminish and the brain's function diminishes. And what are the symptoms of that? Two that I dread most of all are the diminution in memory and the what shall I say, the changes in mood. And if I may just mention briefly what kind of mood you may very well see. As a young man, I remember going to pick up an uncle of mine who was 82, and he was to be attending a family function. And when I got to the door, he met me and he said, "Errol, I'm discombobulated, dispirited, distressed, and depressed. And above all, I have a dysfunction of my bowel and my bladder." Take that as an explanation of a mood that could be influenced by all of those settings. And it is not surprising too that that is accompanied by a loss of memory. But whilst we are probably looking at what you may call the gloomy side of things, there's some good news, you know. Take the current co-president of the United States, Elon Musk. He is the head of a company called Neuralink that is now experimenting with putting in chips, sensors in the brain. And as a result, they can control mood, they can control behavior, they can control the whole functioning of the brain. So that is a way in which we may be able to beat any of these adverse mood changes. Mind you, this kind of experimentation may take another 2 generations before it comes to the man in the street. But nonetheless, science, technology, and innovation is bringing some hope. And further to that, there's a Japanese group of scientists who are saying that they have now beaten the whole process of aging, and they can stop you from aging. They can allow you to live forever. I don't know if you've heard that, but they have been able to interfere in the behavior of the DNA, the genetic makeup, and so allow you to live forever. On a lighter note, I must mention that I've written to them asking to be engineered, re-engineered to live forever at the age of 45. I'm yet to hear from them. But nonetheless, despite the good news that it's futuristic, it's down the road, what it is that, you know, we may be able to do for ourselves now. I know the evening's discussion, the afternoon's discussion will elaborate in detail, but there are a couple of things I thought I just wanted to share, just a few. Firstly, you have to remain active, physically active. When you're on your bicycle, you walk or you swim, whatever. You must remain socially active as well. Get involved, volunteering to be part of social clubs and that sort of thing. Vital. Then you have to stop as much of the worry and anxiety about what you think aging can bring and learn to relax, you know, and that is where just meditating and so on can be of help. And rest. The proverbial 8 hours rest is a goal that we should all aim for. Although at the latter aging, you may find you're achieving only 5, 6, but even that is a good achievement. And then you're eating. Remember that little brain of yours utilizes up to 75% of the energy that the body needs. You know? So to be able to get it to function optimally, you must eat well. And the key thing that I'm going to end on is your hydration, right? Drinking adequate fluids. It is said that you should be drinking at least half of your body weight in fluid ounces. What do I mean by that? if you weigh about 150 pounds, you should be drinking, say, 75 fluid ounces of whether water or its equivalent. 75 fluid ounces would equate to about 9 glasses of water, something like that for the day. And of course, depending on your activity, you may need a little more or less. And I'll just end on a little amusing story to highlight the importance of hydration. It was Christmas. It was a little village in rural Ireland, and the pastor was particularly disturbed at the abuse of alcohol drinking at this time of the year. So he thought he would preach against it next coming opportunity. And so he did. And in the midst of his preaching from the pulpit, and he was ranting and raving against the evils of alcohol, an idea came to him, and he turned to the congregation and he said, "And what do you think, a thirsty donkey would do if he were to come by here now, and all we had was a bucket of water or a bucket of whiskey? From which do you think this thirsty donkey would drink?" A little lady in the front shouted, "From the water, Pastor." And he said, "So right you are, my dear." And he turned to the rest of the congregation and said, "Why do you think this thirsty donkey would drink from the water and not from the whiskey?" And a voice from the back of the church said, "Because it's an ass." It is on that note that I want to invite you to join me in being water asses. We must drink, drink, drink. Hydration is a key component of maintaining quality of health in the aging population. It is on that note then that I want to wish for you a very fruitful afternoon, good interaction, and that you will take away with you information that you can implement and follow. And remember, never, ever give up. Blessings and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Morrison. Always good to hear you speak. And my takeaway points, I don't know if it's the same thing from everybody who is on at this time, are 2 E's and an H. Exercise, eating, hydration, and there's an A, drink water as an ass. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sam, for the next presentation. We can't hear the sound, Sam, please. Sam, we can't hear the sound, the music. Sam? Hello? We can't hear the music. Sam? Sam, can you run it again, please? Because we can't hear the music that goes with it. He's not listening at all.
Apologies,
Everyone,
I'm not sure why it wasn't playing. 1 second.
the music, thank you. Everyone, this gives you a highlight of who Jmh is. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Can you also give us information about the for the pre-test?
Apologies, I have so many mute buttons over here. Apologies. Yeah, so the pre-test is shared in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, those persons who wish to have CMEs for this first CME event of the JMHS, please follow the link. It will take you to a Google form. You will complete the pre-test. We will then have a post-test at the end of the event. And once persons have completed both the pre and post-test and made their payments, they will receive their certificates with CMEs from the Jamaica Midlife Health Society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sam. It's now time for our sponsors to highlight our sponsors and how they've made today's program possible. Thank you, Sam.
At my age, I have to try to enjoy life, especially grandkids. Can't keep up with them like I used to. That is why I have to use Flexim Pain and Muscle Rub.
Flexim Pain and Muscle Rub relieves arthritis pain, sports trauma, muscle and joint stiffness and strain. Distributed out and wide by Indus Pharma Jamaica Limited. 1-888 call IPJ. Honey, for the first time in my life, I cooked. This calls for Peptide Plus. Rapidly relieves indigestion, gas, and upset stomach.
Honey, dinner was fantastic, man.
No gas with Peptide Plus.
Distributed island-wide by Indus Pharma Jamaica Limited. 1-888 call IPJ.
I am Jordan Houri, medical representative with Indus Pharma. And of course, as I mentioned before, we will be introducing our wide range of ophthalmic products today. And we will start from the top with our first product, which is Ciprotop. Now, Ciprotop is our ciprofloxacin eye drops. And of course, Ciprotop is indicated in bacterial conjunctivitis as well as in corneal ulcers. For children 1 year and older and adults in bacterial conjunctivitis, it is recommended that we instill 1 to 2 drops in the affected eye every 2 hours while awake for the first 2 days, and then every 4 hours for 5 days. In corneal ulcers, this therapy is a 3-day therapy, and the first day we instill 2 drops into the affected eye every 15 minutes for 6 hours, then every 30 minutes for the remainder of the first day. Day 2, we instill 2 drops into the affected eye hourly. Day 3, 2 drops into the affected eye every 4 hours, and this treatment may continue for 14 days until the cornea has been normalized. Ciprotop is also indicated for use in the ear, and for children 1 year and older, we instill 3 drops in the ear canal twice daily. For adults, we instill 4 drops in the ear canal twice daily. Each bottle of our Ciprotop costs $1,171. It is important to note that which is indicated for the eye, as you know, can be used in the ear, but that which is indicated for the ear cannot be used in the eye. iWet is another one of our awesome products, and iWet is a lubricating eye drops that contains polyvinyl alcohol and povidone. iWet is indicated for adults and children. For adults, apply 1 to 2 drops in each eye as needed, And for children, there is no special dose that is recommended. Each bottle of iWet costs $977 in plus GCT. Ocularge. Ocularge is our azelastine. And of course, Ocularge is an antihistamine that is indicated for use in the treatment of itching or any symptoms associated with allergic conjunctivitis. The dosage for our Ocularge in children 4 years and older, instill 1 drop into the affected eye twice daily. This dose is also recommended for adults as well. The cost for a bottle of our Ocularge is $1,760 plus GCT. Ocured. Ocured is a unique combination that contains phenylephrine, nafazoline, chlorpheniramine, menthol, and camphor. Ocured is indicated for the temporary relief of minor eye symptoms like itching and redness, and it is indicated to be used in children 6 years and over, as well as adults.
Wow.
The dosage is to instill 1 to 2 drops into the conjunctival sac of the affected eye up to 4 times daily. It is important to note that this therapy should not exceed 3 to 4 days. Each bottle of our Ocured costs $1,301. Ocuvolt is our diclofenac sodium combination, and it is indicated for anti-inflammatory use in the reduction of pain, as well as for post-operative use as well. The dosage for adults is 24 hours after surgery, instill 1 drop into the affected eye 4 times daily. For use of Ocuvolt in inflammatory conditions, 1 drop 4 times daily until symptoms have been resolved. Each bottle of our Ocuvolt costs $1,579, so very affordable for your patients. Tobrot is our tobramycin eye drops, and this is our antibiotic that is used for the reduction of all mild to moderate bacterial infection, as well as severe infections also. The dosage in mild to moderate infections for children 2 years and older is to instill 1 to 2 drops into the affected eye every 4 hours. In severe infections, children 2 years and older, 2 drops in the eye every hour until there is improvement, following which the treatment is reduced prior to discontinuation. Each bottle of Tobrot cost $1,658. Continuing along the line of our bactericidal eye drops, we have the combination of tobramycin and dexamethasone, which is called Tobrot D. Tobrot D contains bactericidal antibiotic tobramycin, as well as the corticosteroid dexamethasone. So not only does Tobrot D have anti-inflammatory properties, but it also has the antibacterial properties as well. This combination is effective in reducing bacterial inflammation, as well as infection, I should say, reducing bacterial infection, as well as addressing the inflammation that is associated with that infection. The dosage for children 2 years and older is to instill 1 to 2 drops every 4 hours, and during the initial 28 to 48 hours, the dosage may be increased to 1 to 2 drops every 2 hours, depending on the severity of the infection. Each bottle of Toba D costs $2,193. Next, we have Timolok, and this is one of the products in our line of glaucoma eye drops indicated for use in patients with open angle glaucoma as well as ocular hypertension. Timolok, as the name suggests, timolol maleate. Eye drop contains a non-selective beta-adrenergic receptor blocking agent, which is indicated in the use in patients with open angle glaucoma and ocular hypertension. The dosage for Timolok is to instill 1 drop into the affected eye twice daily. Each bottle costs around $581, right? So very affordable as it is, and also available on NHF. So it's double the affordability for the patient. Travact is another one of our products indicated for use in patients with glaucoma as well as ocular hypertension. And Travact is our Travoprost, right? So Travact contains a synthetic prostaglandin called Travoprost, and it is indicated to decrease elevated intraocular pressure in patients with ocular hypertension and open angle glaucoma. The dosage for our Travact is to instill 1 drop into the affected eye once daily in the evening. The cost benefit for patients using Travact is significant because Travact is covered not only by NHF but is also available on JADEP as well, right? And also, if patients want to purchase Travact without the JADEP and the NHF coverage, it would cost $2,216. So very affordable comparing to a lot of the other brands that are on the market. Travatim is a combination of Travoprost as well as timolol maleate. This combination is used in patients who are not well managed on the single molecules by themselves, and so they need the combination to effectively decrease the intraocular pressure. This is indicated, as I mentioned before, decreasing elevated intraocular pressure in patients with ocular hypertension and open angle glaucoma, and these patients are typically insufficiently responsive to the individual molecules. The dosage for Travatim is to instill 1 drop into the affected eye once daily in the morning or evening, and it should be noted that if the patient is taking Travatim in the morning, they have to stick with that regimen. If it's in the evening, they have to stick with that regimen, and it should be administered at the same time each day. Each bottle of Travatim costs $3,163, and Travatim is also available on NHF as well. So all of our glaucoma products are covered by NHF, so making it very affordable for all your patients. So again, we summarize with all our wonderful eye drop ophthalmic solutions for your patients: Ciprotalk, iWet, Ocularge, OcuRed, OcuVolt, Timolok, Travact, Travatim, Tobroc, and Tobroc D, right? So these are just images of what the packaging actually looks like. So once you are prescribing, you will be able to have a visual look of what the product actually looks like, right? So thanks again for having us. It was our pleasure being sponsors for this webinar symposium, and we look forward to many more participation, many more sponsorships to come, and thank you for your time. My contact information is on this slide, so should you have any questions, if you want to request some special samples, we are happy to oblige. So thanks again for having us.
And we thank you. Over to you, Mr. Russell.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Loud
you
and
clearly.
clear. Yes.
Okay, and you're seeing my Abbott A.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Paul Russell from Abbott Nutrition, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present at this JMHS webinar and highlight a few of our products. Now, Abbott has a wide portfolio of products covering pediatric nutrition, adult nutrition, and therapeutic nutrition. And I just want to highlight a few of these products that we have available in Jamaica. So let me start with Ensure. For the patient, there are several choices. And the key is to find the ideal Ensure to help the patient reach their nutritional goals. The first product we're looking at is Ensure Max Protein, which is ideal for persons recovering from illness, injury, surgery, where the protein stores have been depleted. The product gives 30 grams of high quality protein, 4 grams of fiber, and 1 gram of sugar, and it is 150 calories per serving. It's suitable for lactose intolerance, it's gluten-free, and it's also kosher and halal prepared. And it comes in assorted flavors. For patients who are not looking for a milk-based drink, we have our Ensure plant-based protein drink, which is vegan-friendly, and it is dairy-free with 100% plant-based proteins. It's 180 calories, provides 20 grams of high-quality protein and 5 grams of fiber. So you're getting your nutrients and all that you need in a plant-based presentation. For persons who are living with diabetes, we have 3 presentations. We have Ensure Original. That's the one in the center, which has 10 grams of protein and contains 180 calories. We have Glucerna Hunger Smart, which has 15 grams of protein and 180 calories. And we have Glucerna Protein Smart, the newest kid on the block, which has 30 grams of protein and 150 calories. And all our Glucernas are kosher and halal prepared. They're gluten-free and they're suitable for lactose intolerance. So your patients would have quite a choice. For persons with hard to heal wounds, and these wounds could be by way of pressure injuries, diabetic foot ulcers, surgical incisions, or other acute or chronic wounds, there's Juven. Now, Juven contains amino acids, arginine, which helps with promoting blood flow, glutamine, which supports new tissue development and supports the immune system. We have collagen protein to stimulate internal collagen production. We have HMB contained, which is a metabolite of leucine, which helps to slow muscle breakdown and enhances protein synthesis. And we also have micronutrients, vitamin C, E, B12, and zinc. Now, all these components are vital for wound healing. Juven is recommended. Recommended dose is 2 sachets per day to support wound healing. Just need to mix with 8 to 10 fluid ounces of water or juice, and it comes as an orange flavor or fruit punch flavor. And finally, for rehydration, whether it's as a result of doing excessive exercise, or you have sweating, extreme heat, or vomiting and diarrhea, there's hydration for all. Previously, Pedialyte, our product for rehydration, was for kids, but now their formulation is for everybody. So hydration can be had for all. And it replenishes electrolytes fast, and we have a variety of products to help keep you hydrated. I've included my business card, which has my cell number, 489-6093. My cell number, my email address, is paul.russell with 1 L @abbott.com, and our products are distributed by CareMed at 20 Lady Musgrave Road. I thank you for the opportunity to present on our products, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you so much for your presentation. And we've learned a lot from your presentation about the different products we can get for children and adults. And also we've learned from the previous presentation from Prist Pharmaceuticals. Thanks again. And I hope everybody has learned something that they can use for their own brain health, because once you're treating the body, you're treating the brain. Is that correct, Mr. Russell?
That's true.
Yes,
That's
so
so
you've
true.
got to look after yourself.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, it gives me great pleasure at this time to introduce the next presenter, who is Dr. Denise Eldemire-Shearer. And you might see me smiling because I've always admired Dr. Denise Eldemire-Shearer and wondered when was I going to meet her, either in person or on a webinar, and today is my opportunity. She's a professor of public health and aging, and a distinguished career of academic achievements. But most importantly, what I see from her CV is that she's a CD and an OJ, so well recognized by Jamaica for her work. She has been working in the field of aging since 1982, 43 years ago. 43 years ago, she started. Her key areas of interest include healthy aging and its determinants, as well as community-based long-term care. She is very strong on advocacy as part of her work. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Denise Eldemire-Shearer, and Sam will now play the video recording of her presentation. Thank you, Sam. Over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the Midlife Health Society for this opportunity to present on brain health, and especially on brain health across the lifespan. Why does brain balance matter at every stage of life? Well, first we have to start with an understanding of what is brain health. It's defined as the state of the brain functioning across all of our domains: thinking, sensory, socio-emotional, behavioral, and motor. And it allows a person, if you are maximizing brain health, to realize the full potential over the life course. It is much more than just cognition and neurological concerns. Brain health is related to mental health. Mental health is related to brain health, but they are not the same thing. Brain health is an important mediator for health and social outcomes, which makes sense because if brain health is about thinking and about making decisions, then these are the decisions that will impact health and social outcomes. One's brain health, whether it's functional, whether it's deficient, not only affects the person, but also affects family, friends, and colleagues when the person is not behaving, thinking correctly. It's also essential for overall well-being and the changes throughout the lifespan. So here you see the circles, and you see them all interacting together, with brain health being mental health as well as cognitive health. Then mental health is included as part, which is about wellness, freedom from symptoms of mental illness, and most importantly, the small circle there that speaks to the state of positive health, including quality of life. All of this is what brain health is. Clearly, it's influenced by genetics, but equally important, just as for some of our chronic diseases, it's influenced by the environment, lifestyle, and life's experiences. So we are laying the foundation in understanding brain health for how to protect it and maximize its wellness. The brain is probably our most complex organ. It allows us to sense, to feel, to think, to move, and interact with the world around us. And what the diagram here is showing you is that different parts of the brain contribute to different activities. Important because if there is disease in any of these areas, whether through stroke, tumors, or whatever, and of course dementia, then it is going to influence brain health. Most importantly for brain, it can build new connections. We talk about the neurons, etc., which I'll mention later. But in the brain, different activities, different experiences lead to different connections and compensations. It is therefore important to minimize risk factors that could damage the brain and to enhance the protective ones. So these then are the determinants. We talk about the determinants, the social determinants of health, etc. You will see some of them here, but you will see others. So brain health is a complicated, or I should say it has many contributions. Physical health, and here you see the life course start to come out, because we talk about intrauterine health, we talk about maternal health, all the way down to the NCDs, to injuries, and to health behaviors. We talk about environments, the safe use of chemicals, radiation, or should I say protection from radiation, healthy workplaces, climate change comes in here, safety and security. And we don't only talk, we talk in terms of the aging process about mainly financial security. Physical security is just as important. And for those that are in countries that have humanitarian crises, important. But for us here, we will think about emergencies, hurricanes, earthquakes. Brain health is very connected, and here the life course perspective is particularly important and strong and a major contributor, because we're talking about learning and social connections, education, lifelong learning, social connections. We want to avoid social isolation, and the importance of social networks. And last but not least, the access to quality service. Now, this quality service is not only speaking about health. It's speaking about social care, entertainment. It's talking about accessing all sorts of interaction. So it leads from that into skilled workforce, interdisciplinary teams, and finally into the health, access to essential medicines, diagnostics, and health products. Caregiver support is becoming increasingly important. With the aging of the population, there is more chance of problems with brain health, and the more chance that there's a need for a caregiver. And therefore, this brings in the importance of the caregiver support. What happens then to the brain during aging? And remember, we're using the life course here. Early in life, there is rapid growth. You don't suddenly become 60 and over and fall into the category and there's a sudden change. Brain development starts in utero. Early in life, there's rapid growth. One only has to look at the size of a child's head at 1 versus 12 or 13. And that continues on through adolescence and early life. Kind of stable by the time you get to 25 and into your 30s, where not much is happening. But by 40, some shrinkage begins and some slowing begins, usually not noticeable. It's just what's happening physically inside of your brain. By 60, the rate of shrinkage and slowing does increase, still not usually noticeable. Yes, you may forget your keys a little more. You may go into the kitchen and not know what you went there for, but usually life is not disrupted. After 60, communication between the neurons can be less effective. We had said that the brain can do new compensations and readjust. This becomes a little slower and less effective, but does not disappear. There are decreases in blood flow, increases in inflammation. Remember, inflammation in brain health is speaking not to having an infectious disease, but cells die, and it's part of the body's response to have an inflammatory response to get rid of the dead cells. And diseases begin to play a more important role in impacts on brain health. Overall, then, I would say at around after 60, and usually up until mid-70s, you will see mild decreases in efficiency. The key message of this particular point I'm making is that persons need to be aware of the changes, and between the person, their family, and their healthcare provider, to notice when something is not just normal change, but is also pathological, and to seek medical intervention. So these are the patterns of brain aging that we see, and you will see some are red, some are green, and clearly you'd not want to be on the green side. So healthy young adults have balanced activation, intact cognition, no changes in the brain, cognition remains intact, the nerves are compensating, but for some, you will also have where there's loss of neural distinctiveness, things become a little unorganized, and there are some suppressions. You can see the role that a stroke would play here, and there's neural inefficiency. But there are positives to brain aging. Language skills can stay sharp and may improve. I am sure that some of you would know somebody diagnosed with dementia who still has all of their wits around them and is enjoyable in a conversation. Emotional well-being can actually be better. You begin to accept the changes of life, and you begin to say, well, we're above ground and we get continue with living. And more importantly, I suspect for most of us who are on this webinar, intellect remains the same. Unless there is a clinical diagnosis of something being wrong, most older people can still think and can be part of decision making. So this is the brain health. This slide summarizes it across the lifespan. And I keep stressing, I can't stress enough, that it starts in utero. So you have risk factors, and you see them there. You see the cigarette smoking away, the protective factors, which we will go back into, the diet, the environment, the exercise. And of course, we still know there are some unknown, because there are still some diseases we really don't know what is the contributor. So it's lifespan, yes, but it's also subjective and it's also objective, because some things may bother somebody, they don't bother somebody else. And clearly, if you go back to the circles, it's multidimensional. There's no one single item that can be singled out. And therefore, it's a multidimensional and dynamic process. And I think that's what's very important for us to recognize. You can have a bad time. That does not mean that that bad time is going to continue throughout life. So the early childhood factors, a time that the brain is highly plastic and responsive to experience. We all remember being told that you have to educate a child early, you have to instill discipline early, because you're shaping brain architecture and function. And there are factors for those who are in the health or social profession, there are things you want to avoid for children. Clearly, childhood adversity, poverty, abuse, neglect, which can increase the risk of mental health problems. And therefore, as we look at supporting families towards wellness, we have to take these things into consideration. Adulthood and the brain continues to be adaptable, capable of learning and forming new connections. This is just summarizing the previous slides. Some cognitive decline is normal, it is not inevitable. And you all of us have heard, if you do not use it, you will lose it. This is particularly true. Equally true are the lifestyle choices, and we will mention those later. The diet, exercise. Here, sleep and stress management, not always mentioned in terms of the chronic disease prevention, definitely important for brain health. Because this is being put on by the Menopause Society, and because there's a lot of discussion in the media, especially the social media now, on the need to pay attention to menopause, I thought I would include a couple of slides on brain health and menopause. Estrogen decline can cause memory lapses. Please notice that the word is lapses. Can also cause mood swings, but usually temporary and can be managed. Managed by medications partially, but more importantly, counseling and support and education, because once you understand what's happening, most people have problems with fear of the unknown. We all do. Once you know what's happening, I think it's easier to deal with it. You will hear people refer to brain fog, which refers to the difficulty during menopause in concentrating, remembering words, and finding the right words at times. And the important thing here is that not everybody has all of these symptoms. There are many women who go through this without any of them. The mood changes can be very difficult. Remember, one slide spoke to brain health impacting not just the person, but if you have somebody who is having irritability, the night sweats, sleep is going to, of the spouse, of the partner, is going to be disturbed. Children sense irritability. So mood changes can disrupt the entire family and the workplace. And then there are the sleep disturbances. And the common thread to all of this is discuss it, seek professional advice, talk to friends, but most importantly, talk to your healthcare provider. The men don't escape, not usually as dramatic as a female who has the hot sweats and the night can't sleep, etc. But there is a decline in testosterone, call it male menopause, call it andropause, whatever. But there is this decline, which plays a role in attention, motivation, and memory, resulting in a lack of enthusiasm and energy. This particular change here is memory retention, hence forgetfulness. And if this is recognized early, it can be corrected. Back we are to seeking professional advice. The gender difference is that the change in men is much slower and often not noticeable. Other mental health effects of the declining hormones are fatigue, decreased motivation, and low self-esteem. So let us look at over 60. Some decline will be noticeable, mostly delays in thinking and sometimes memory as reaction speed decreases, difficulty with multitasking, and mild decreases in attention span. I had a training officer, and she was in her late 70s, and she first got me to understand this. I would call her in the evening to plan for the next day, and the first thing she would say to me is, I need to turn off the television because I cannot listen to two voices at the same time. Now, for most of us, when we were studying for CSEC and all of those things, in my day, it was O levels and A levels. We listened to it with music. This does change, and you have to concentrate. The older that you get, you have to concentrate on what you're doing. And it does not necessarily indicate dementia. Long-term memory is usually well preserved in the over 60s. With increasing age, cortex can shrink, neurotransmitter changes can occur, and dementia does increase with age, but overall our dementia figures are low. We have a 6% total in the over 60 population, but to be honest, it does increase with age, and by the time you get into the over 80 age group, rates can be as high as 40%. And over 80, in spite of the changes, the brain can experience and compensate for slower processing. Because although I have said that their rates of dementia are higher, many of us know many older people that are perfectly functional. So here now, whereas before we spoke about stress management and those things, now taking care of physical health, especially chronic disease, becomes even more important, as chronic disease management, prevention, management, control can slow down the changes. So what then are the factors affecting brain health? And back we are now to life course. Physical health, mental health, and you see it in this circle slides, and you see how it's the overlapping of everything that leads to the mental health difficulties. So you have poor physical health, difficult temperament, low IQ. We can't leave out drug abuse when we're looking at life course. And here we're not only speaking about the recreational or illegal drugs, we also have abuse of tranquilizers and other things which don't fall into the category of being illegal. Social connections are important, environmental toxins, and our psychological makeup. We spoke earlier when we looked at childhood about the need to learn to cope. Some young people don't learn coping skills, and that goes through them with life. So if you don't have good coping skills, you're not going to manage menopause well. You're not going to manage the difficulties of adulthood, whether at the workplace. And all of this is going to go into the later life and is going to affect your brain health. So here we see it. And this slide gives you the early factors where it's about schooling and all of that. Then when we get into this 45 and over, we start looking at hypertension, strokes. See, the smoking is still in there. The weight loss in terms of frailty, where it's muscle loss. But you see the positives: physical activity, dietary, making sure you stay active. Depression can play a role, and you know that depression can be linked to menopause, linked back to brain health. So there are many factors that go into brain health. What then are the brain health and diseases? Because up until now, we have been talking about healthy brains, and we've been talking about healthy brain activity. But there are unfortunately some diseases that are going to affect brain health in a negative way. These are the conditions that emerge throughout the life course due to disruptions in brain growth, damage to brain structures, or impaired brain function. So we think of strokes, we think of Parkinson's, we think of brain injuries, trauma, which sometimes you don't even remember about till later. Mental health illnesses come into this, and of course, hypertension, diabetes, the illnesses that can impact. So healthcare for these disorders require a multidisciplinary approach. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. I'm just trying to put it into the framework of brain health, focusing on promotion, prevention, treatment, care, rehab, and again, the caregiver are all important when one is considering brain health. These are the list of the diseases you want to think of: the neurodegenerative, dementia, Parkinson's, and I'm sure there are others that I have not mentioned, strokes, infections, and I want to highlight this one because we still have HIV, and we know that we see early aging, we see decreased brain function in HIV positive persons. Epilepsy, multiple sclerosis are all things that we want to take into consideration. So, what are your strategies? Because all of this talk is about making sure that we maximize our brain function. Yes, there may be issues. Yes, there may be problems, but how do I minimize any permanent effect? And we go back to those words that we all don't like to hear: physical activity. I've stayed away from the word exercise. So let us think about physical activity, increasing blood flow. And of course, physical activity can take you, if you're walking around the neighborhood, into social connections. Number two is really quite critical: intellectual stimulation and social engagement. After retirement, we tend to withdraw. The circles get smaller for social activity. We become the empty nesters because the children go out. So it's very important for us to make sure that we have activities that continue to use our brain. Healthy diet, stress management, and always seeking medical attention if there are concerns. One would also advise that after 45, regular medical checkups are critical to all of this. And I thank you for the opportunity to do this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Eldemire, for that video. I see on the agenda that we have an opportunity to ask questions. Dr. Brown, can you tell me if questions can be answered by a team, or if Dr. Eldemire is here to answer the questions, or anybody else who is here to answer any questions? But while we're waiting on you to respond, Dr. William Brown, I'm going to ask a few persons to give insights into what you learned from the presentation. What came out to you mostly and really hit you in this presentation? Anyone? While we're waiting on Dr. Brown to respond.
Right. We can answer some of her questions. I have two weeks. Dr. Brian Kazaara, who is on to do a presentation, and Dr. Kai Morgan, Campbell, who is also here. So they can help.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions from attendees? And we're not going to take 426 questions, but let's see how we can get some questions in, especially for those of you who are doing the CME credits. Any questions? Unmute your mic.
Magdalena, there are 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, go ahead. Can you say what they are? Go ahead, Arlene. Can you repeat the questions?
Sure. The first question asks, what is the impact of repeatedly witnessing and or experiencing violence, physical, mental, emotional, on brain health?
Wow. Who will answer that for us? Which one of the doctors will answer that for us?
Attempt to a little bit. Dr. Kazaara is there. I think he can answer that. But I think post-traumatic stress disorder is something to consider when you have repeated trauma, emotional or physical, and definitely that adds up to the deterioration of brain health. I don't know if Dr. Kazaara, who is a psychiatrist, can add something. Brian, you're there? Dr. Kazaara?
Good afternoon. Yes, afternoon. Sorry, I was on a call, so I think I missed what you may have said before. I'm just coming on.
All right, you may ask the question again, Magdalena.
The question that was asked, I'm going to ask Arlene to repeat the question, please.
Okay, the question from Kanchana reads, what is the impact of repeatedly witnessing and or experiencing violence, be it physical, mental, or emotional, on brain health?
Okay, so that's a great question. The impact can be quite varied, and it also depends on what stage of life. So, like Prof just highlighted in her presentation, the brain is always developing over a lifespan. And similarly, the kind of impact that exposure to abuse can have on someone also can vary. So we know that for children and adolescents, there's particular vulnerability to exposure to abuse. And that's where the concept of adverse childhood experiences comes from. And an interesting concept that was popularized by Dr. Nadine Burke, who's whose father is actually Jamaican. What it tells us is that when children and adolescents are exposed to abuse in the forms that you just outlined, like physical, sexual, emotional, it can actually have a very broad array of impact. It does increase the risk of them developing mental illnesses of various types, depression, of course, post-traumatic stress disorder, even psychotic conditions. It increases the chances of them having substance use disorder. But even more compelling is the fact that it also increases the risk for a number of general medical conditions, like even cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So the impact is quite varied. And that is when we look at children and adolescents. We know that for young adults, or of course, adults in the middle age, it can also increase the risk for things like chronic stress, which then can give way to an increased risk for mental illness and general medical illnesses as well. And just to emphasize, let's not forget the elderly. When the elderly are exposed to abuse, they're also at risk for mental illnesses and general medical conditions. A lot of times, I think, as a society, we may not pay attention to the reality of elderly abuse. You know, sometimes in a family setting, the older adult, it can be the most vulnerable member. They might be physically frail, or if not frail, they may not be as strong as other members. And at times, they can be the victim of abuse even within their own homes or in nursing homes as well. And when that does happen, we know that they're also at risk for mental illness and general medical conditions. So what I'll say is that the impact is quite varied. It varies across the lifespan. And it also depends on the type of abuse, because we do see differences between physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. But overall, it certainly appears to increase the incidence for mental illnesses and general medical conditions, regardless of where it is in the lifespan.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks,
I
Dr.
just,
Kazaara.
yes, I just also wanted to, Magdalena, I just also wanted to state that I have seen several presentations where they have shown that especially the youngsters, that when they undergo a lot of the trauma in their communities, where they have a lot of the shooting and so forth, their brains, the stress that they're undergoing actually affects the development of their brain. The brain, when they do MRIs of the brain of regular children who are not having the stress, as opposed to children who are having these stress episodes, the brain cells are different. And in fact, if you leave it that way without taking the children out of that environment, the changes are permanent and they lead to the genesis of all of these youngsters growing up and being problematic in society and so forth. So yes, brain health really does start at the very, very beginning. And we need to do a lot more to improve the brain health of our children in a lot of these communities, because these changes become permanent.
Thank you, Dr. Anna Brown, Morgan. Thank you for that. Okay, based on our time, I think we now need to move on. Was there one other question, Arlene? Was there one other question? No? So can I ask Sam to do the next?
Sorry, there were several other questions.
But just give me one more based on time. Yes.
All right, I'll take this one. What treatment options are available to slow the progression of Alzheimer's?
Sorry, which one of our doctors will answer that question?
I don't know if Dr. Campbell is here. Campbell Brown or Kazaara. Dr. Campbell. Morgan-Campbell. Okay.
Greetings, I'm here. What's the
Right. Question?
Yeah, the question is, what treatment options are available to slow the progression of Alzheimer's?
Okay, well, what I know, I can speak, maybe Dr. Kazaara could speak better to some of the psychotropic meds. I don't know if he's gone, but for sure, Dr. Professor Errol actually mentioned quite a number of things in terms of treatment, and they're really important. The things like your physical activity, your coping tools, your ability to, I was gonna say those same things in terms of brain health, because what we do know about Alzheimer's is that when the symptoms become obvious, the degeneration has already started happening from several years before. So we are trying to, we know things like vitamin E help, and there are some medications that are utilized to help to slow the progression, but they do not cure.
Yes, I think Dr. Kai Morgan did answer that question quite sufficiently. I actually do include very briefly a discussion on some of the treatment options in my presentation. So I hope that when we get to my presentation, that will also aid in answering that question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kai and Dr. Kazaara. It's now time for Sam. Sam, can you now do the next set of sponsors highlights for us, please?
No problem. The next set of sponsors are Servicare Distributors Limited and Pharma Science, and we thank them for coming on board.
Every day is full of opportunities for becoming even better. That's why at Kurika, we develop high-quality, safe, and effective products and make no compromises in this regard. We are committed to continuous investments in development and research, to state-of-the-art technology, equipment, and processes, to innovation, which we incorporate into all our operations. We are committed to laboratory tests and analyses that ensure comprehensive quality control, to clinical research that improves treatments and contributes to the overall advancement of medicine, and to our skilled and dedicated team of colleagues who are devoted to their work and patients. All development and production phases, from the active pharmaceutical ingredient to the finished product, are managed in-house. We make sure that quality, safe, and effective medicines reach you. This is how we help you live a healthy life.
Something that is important for all of us, regardless of our age, is maximizing our brain health. Before midlife, our 20s to 30s, our brain is at its peak. We're learning new things, forming new connections, and building our careers, but most of all, establishing health habits that will serve us well for the rest of our lives, such as exercise, a balanced diet, and proper sleep. During midlife, the 40s to 50s, our brain will undergo natural changes. We may notice we're not as sharp as we used to be, but there are things we can do to stay mentally sharp, such as staying mentally active, managing stress, and staying socially engaged. Beyond midlife, the 60s and above, as we age, our brain continues to change, but with the right strategies, we can stay mentally sharp and healthy. We can prioritize cognitive health. We can stay physically active and monitor and manage health conditions. Maximizing our brain health takes effort and dedication. If the holistic measures fail, there may be a need for medical intervention to manage stress, anxiety, depression, sleep, dementia, or other conditions. We at Pharma Science offer a variety of products for maximizing brain health before, during, and beyond midlife. With an eye for quality and cost effectiveness, we are ready to meet your specific needs. Our CNS line includes a variety of products such as our antipsychotics, PMS risperidone and PMS quetiapine. There's also the antiparkinsonian PMS benztropine, the mood stabilizer valproic acid, the antidepressants PMS sertraline and PMS paroxetine, and there's a hypnotic PMS zopiclone. Like our healthcare providers, we at Pharmascience know how to put the well-being of our patients first. Lastly, but in no way the least, we are committed to offering quality medications at affordable prices. As part of our difference, we strive to offer the best solutions to your patients' needs. We are transparent in our intention to serve our patients and try our best to maintain the cost and not to compromise on the quality of our medications, especially through these global changes. Despite the ongoing inflation, these PMS products and all of our lines remain accessible to all patients, from Morant Point to Negro Point. Throughout our 14 parishes, we want patients to have access not just to these products, but all PMS products. How will this happen? This will happen through you, our healthcare providers, with your commitment of helping to build the PMS brand. Help us maximize brain health.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I trust you have found the first presentation very informative. My name is Kellyanne Chin. I'm the Public Relations Officer for the Jmhs, and it gives me distinct pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Kai A.D. Morgan-Campbell. She is a registered clinical psychologist and mother to 4 children. Wife to Charlie Campbell. She's a homebody who treasures all things, psychologically and family. She has been lecturing since 1999 in various topics in clinical psychology, such as psychopathology, neuropsychology, therapy and counseling, child and adult assessment, ethics, research methods, and statistics. She is the immediate past president of the Jamaica Psychological Society, co-chair of the Professional Practice and Standards Committee of the Caribbean Alliance of National Psychology Associations. She sits on the executive board of the Lister Mayer Gilby School for the Deaf and is a member of the American Psychological Association, Global Psychology Alliance. She's also a member of the International Movement for Prescription Authority for Psychologists and the Association for Black Psychologists. She has spent much of her life's work focused on trauma work, especially with children living within the context of violence and abuse, assessments, psychopathology, and education. Currently, she runs a multi-practice where trauma and assessments are key services and is the founding executive director of Carlel Journey, where she is hoping to be pivotal in creating trauma-informed societies. Her presentation will be on the importance of early diagnosis of neurological disorders before, during, and beyond midlife. Please help me to welcome Dr. Kai Morgan-Campbell. Over to you, Dr. Morgan-Campbell.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. Having some camera issues, so I can't get to put myself, I can't be seen, but you can hear me, right? All right. So give thanks for that.
Loud and clear.
Thanks for that introduction, Kellyanne. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the importance of early diagnosis, right, of our neurological disorders. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the main ones, the more common ones. Next slide, please. The epilepsy a little bit, the Alzheimer's, as you've been talking about a little bit, the multiple sclerosis, etc. Right? So when we say neurological disorders, let me just frame that a little bit for you. We're talking about anything that is impacting the nervous system, right? And it's either gonna be structural, so like how the brain is impacting the brain, because the brain is really critical in all of this, right? Whether it's biochemical, right? So there are some chemical changes in the body, in the brain, in the neurotransmitters, hormones, etc., or electrical abnormalities, as in things like epilepsy, right? So the causes are going to vary, and they may be genetic, they may be due to infections or lifestyle, or it's environmental, or also injury. So our neurological disorders are very broad, but we're going to kind of work with the common ones. Next slide. Common ones as we look forward to the neurodegenerative diseases. So those are the ones like the Parkinson's, like the Alzheimer's, like the vascular dementias, things like that. We look at the autoimmune, and you were discussing a little bit some of the autoimmune things where the body starts to really attack itself because of, attacking certain proteins and substances like multiple sclerosis. And then the ones that are more episodic, like epilepsy. Symptoms kind of come and go. Sometimes they feel normal, and then there can be episodes, right? So those are some of the common ones. There are several others, several that are related to, trauma-related issues, neuromuscular issues, infection-related, etc. So, but they're all considered neurological disorders. Next slide. So there is a clear link between our mental health and our neurological health, right? So when we talk about neurological well-being or brain health, we cannot really separate it from our mental health. There's no doubt about it. It impacts certain areas of our lives. It impacts certain areas like sleep, like mood, like motivation, that inevitably then lead to kind of our mental health, right? So we can't separate them. We do not separate at all our mental and our physical, mental, neurological. And I think that's a really important point to put forward because, we get it a lot when people are talking about our brain, which all of us have, right? And what is happening in our brain. And then when it comes to mental health, sometimes we're a little less cognizant, a little less aware of it, but it's actually the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. And so many things impact our mental health from our physical health. And there are a million examples of them. Next slide, please. So we're talking about these four main ones, right? And when we talk about the impact of them, they actually look pretty similar. So we have cognitive decline. That's a common thing that happens, especially with the Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. We have also emotional and psychological distress, right? That comes from all of them, and how we are how we feel, how we're impacted at those levels, right? There's also functional limitations. So that means that it impacts our daily lives, how we can get up, how we work, how we are able to be productive, how we are able to relate to our loved ones, to our friends and family, etc. All of them have that kind of limitation coming in there. And then caregiver burden is also a piece, a big impact. So impacting the individuals that are caring for this for this person that is struggling with the neurological disorder. We always have to take that into consideration. And the economic burden, right? So that comes with caregiver burden as well, but this is a big issue. Is everybody hearing me? I'm seeing somebody saying sound in the group.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, all right, good.
Okay,
okay, good.
Thumbs up now.
Okay, good, thanks. Right, I might go, there may be times when I just maybe go a little low. I think the internet is not so stable sometimes, but you should be able to, it shouldn't be for any length of time. So hopefully you can get it. Stop me if there's any big problem. So then we have, so we have the emotional burden, the economic burden, as I was talking about. We can't leave these things out because they all, at the end of the day, every single one of these that I've mentioned impact our mental health and our emotional health and our ability to cope and open us up to the disease process, right? So to other diseases, lifestyle diseases, you know, all of these things which are impacted by our stress response cycle, which impact our stress response cycle, right? Next slide. So they all have that common theme, right? So when can they be detected? I mentioned earlier that it is very common for us to, when we see the impact of Alzheimer's, for example, that there has been degeneration, there have been issues going on before. So there are varying onset ages that we tend to see these manifest, right? Sometimes they manifest fairly early before midlife, right? Like these are and I'll start with those. We're not talking a lot about these today, but the neurodevelopmental disorders, because they're also impacting our brain health, right? These come in infancy and in early adulthood as well. So it could be epilepsy, right? Because we could have childhood onset epilepsy, childhood onset MS as well, multiple sclerosis, ADHD, autism. These are all called neurodevelopmental disorders. During midlife, we have things like the MS and early onset Parkinson's, early onset Alzheimer's. All these things can have early onset, right? And then we're talking about in the 30s to the 50s at this point. Yeah, very early. So sometimes we might think that these symptoms are typical signs of aging. And sometimes as we go through as well and look a little bit at some of the symptoms, we'll see that they mimic some of the symptoms for menopause, right? And perimenopause, right? So those are important things to keep in mind as well. Beyond midlife, they can also start then. So there's late onset for Alzheimer's disease, for Parkinson's, and these are after 60, right? So again, it's a little more challenging here to think about when, you know, are these symptoms, are these signs of aging, are these signs of perimenopause or menopause, what's really going on here, right? Next slide. So we think about that time to diagnosis, right? And this is the part where it's really, really important for us to understand that the early diagnosis before any symptoms start to show up, right, can disrupt everyday activities, and that there are things going on, right? When you start to see that type of memory loss or the kind of disorientation that you may see when somebody is maybe at stage 1, stage 2 of a dementia process, that it has already been happening. The process, as a matter of fact, I believe the number is 20 years before you see this onset of the symptoms, something is happening, right? And so this kind of brings to bear the importance of us taking care of our brain health from early, right? From early, and as much as we can, taking care of ourselves, right? So early diagnosis can happen when it's really at these early stages and you're just seeing, like, you know, a toops or like a smidgen of this happening or that happening. Late diagnosis is when now we're really into, like, it's disrupting the everyday activities, and it's causing problems and impairment and distress and caregiver issues and all of that, right? So next one, please. So some general warning signs of the neurological disorders, right? We know about the memory loss. That one tends to be very common, you know, but we also have things like, you know, a headache that changes or is different. So maybe you've consistently had migraines and, you know, you get them in your temple and they're changing a little bit. Sometimes it comes with a loss of feeling or tingling, yeah, impaired mental ability, lack of coordination, tremors, slurred speech, language impairment, even if it could be expressive language, receptive language, comprehending language in general, sometimes a decline in vision. So the symptoms kind of are pretty broad with these general warning signs that can overlap with other things, right? Go ahead, next. Right, so the symptoms of Alzheimer's in particular, let's look at that one, right? So we have cognitive. So we know the mild memory lapses, word finding difficulties, trouble with planning or organization. We have motor issues as well. Sometimes there's slight coordination changes. They can be subtle, right? Sensory things. So maybe issues with smell or minor depth perception. Psychological issues, there may be anxiety, mild anxiety, irritability, and early social withdrawal. In the middle stages, in the middle onset, if you will, worsening memory loss, then trouble recognizing people or places. So it's getting a little more intense, right? So increased stiffness, fine motor decline, reduced ability to interpret visual cues or sounds or smell, and psychologically, the irritability heightens, the agitation, maybe some paranoia, depression, social withdrawal. So some of these things, of course, everybody is different, right? And so the way that they present and the symptoms you present with and the behaviors are going to be different. In the later stages of Alzheimer's, we're talking about progressively worse kinds of responses, the same behaviors that are coming from similar behaviors, but they are progressively more challenging and more severe. Next, please. So going to take a quick look at this video that kind of looks at normal aging versus dementia for us to just kind of get a little sense of what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
Many of us get a little more forgetful as we get older. Most people will need a bit longer to remember things, get distracted more easily, or struggle to multitask as well as they once did. These changes are normal, but they can be frustrating and sometimes scary. People who have cared for someone with dementia are especially scared of the disease because they've seen the actual physical, emotional, and mental suffering. According to a survey regarding caregivers' fear of various medical conditions, 86% of the participants reported that dementia was their most feared disease, while only 9.8% mentioned cancer as their most feared disease. But how do you know if it's just normal aging? As a rule of thumb, for the doctor to diagnose dementia, a person's symptoms must have become bad enough to significantly affect their daily life, not just be an occasional minor irritation. I'll give you some examples. It is normal to forget someone's name or an appointment, but it is unusual if you forget the names of close friends or family, or even forget recent events, such as visitors that you had that day. Anyone can forget where they parked their car, but how many forget the name of a car? Have you ever forgotten what a refrigerator is? How about a stove? It is normal to misplace things from time to time. For example, your phone, your car keys, or the TV remote. But it becomes a problem if you find your objects in unusual places. For example, putting your keys in the fridge or a newspaper in the microwave. A professor once told me, if you forget where you put your car keys, that's normal aging. If you forget what your car keys are for, that's dementia. It is normal to go into a room and forget why you went there. You often remember it again quite quickly. It is unusual if you get lost or do not know where you are in a familiar place. For example, getting lost in the grocery store 2 miles from home that you've shopped at for 20 years. It is okay to occasionally make mistakes when doing family finances. It becomes a problem when you have trouble keeping track of monthly bills. Some people also start overbuying things. For example, someone who would later be diagnosed with dementia would bring bags and bags of clothes for her grandson. Her daughter told her that her grandson had plenty of t-shirts and that he had grown into the next size pants. But she would bring more t-shirts and more pants that were the wrong size. The daughter was very annoyed. Why doesn't she listen to me? The fact was, she was listening, but she couldn't remember what she had told her. Finally, something remarkable is that in normal aging, the person itself is often very concerned about memory loss, while in dementia, close family members are often more concerned, while the patient itself tries to hide its forgetfulness and often refuses to seek professional help. It is important, however, to remember that everyone is different, and it's not because you tick one of the boxes that you will have dementia. If after listening to this you are worried about yourself or someone close to you, visit your family doctor and talk about your concerns. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up.
All right. Thumbs up. Okay. Okay. So we see also that there are some clear differences, right? Because, you know, we can get all worried now. We're like, okay, I'm forgetting things. I don't know where I put my keys. I don't, you know, all these things that happen to us, that am I in the early stages of a dementia process? Which is important to note, by the way, that dementia, there are just several types of dementia. Alzheimer's is one, Parkinson's is one, multiple sclerosis can also cause dementia. That's another, vascular dementia. So there are different types of dementia, right? So when we think about that, you know, am I in a dementia process or what, right? So early symptoms of Parkinson's, they don't look a whole lot different, except one of the main things for Parkinson's is the strong motor issues that come up, right? So the tremors at rest, which means that if the hands are staying still, you're supposed to, you know, hold your hands out, it's shaking, right? Your legs are shaking, you know, even when you're steady, right? And so those tend to be a lot more pronounced with multiple sclerosis, with Parkinson's as well, occasional changes also with sensory, and you see that the psychological things remain similar. So there's mild anxiety, there's depression, there is increased in the middle stages and severe in the later stages. And there can also be paranoia and hallucinations in the later stages, right? So next slide, please. So we look at also some of the differences with Parkinson's and aging. So in the middle there, we see some of the similarities, right? The pain increases, difficulty walking, perhaps, cognitive challenges, you know, maybe there's some urinary issues and some constipation, but there are some very clear differences, right? Shaking when you're not moving a body part is not a normal part of aging, right? You may have mild muscle weakness, but not shaking when you're not moving, right? It's the affect, the flat affect, so your face is pretty much expressionless. That can happen with Parkinson's as well because of the motoric issues that do affect the facial muscles, right? So difficulties quickly regulating blood pressure while standing from a seated position, those kinds of things are different and are unique to Parkinson's, right? We might have, you know, occasional forgetfulness, mild word finding difficulties. You can't remember somebody's name. You can't remember the name of the thing. What is that called again? And you'd start to describe it. Those are a little bit more in line with aging, right? And the fact that you can describe it is a big deal and a big difference. Next slide, please. So we also, for MS now, the multiple sclerosis, this also has strong a motor component, except the challenge is not at rest, but there is muscle weakness and there's difficulty with coordinating and balance. So sometimes, you know, they may trip or fall over what nothing seems to be there. So those kinds of things, but we see the similar cognitive issues, similar psychological issues, the depression, the anxiety that increase, right? And the sensory issues as well are similar. There's some, smell is not usually implicated in this one, but there's some difficulty with generally interpreting sensory stimuli when you get later on into the disease process. Next slide, please. So next, yes, thanks, right? So of course, again, we have some similarities and we have some differences, right? So I'm just going to talk about the ones that overlap. There's that decline in cognitive functioning. There's the balance and coordination issue, and there's incontinence that may come up as well with both, right? And a couple on either side, MS, you're gonna have the symptoms tend to come suddenly and they worsen over time, right? With aging, they're usually more gradual, right? Gradual changes that occur. So that's an important one to kind of take note of. Next slide, please. And then epilepsy, right? So we have, of course, the motoric issue is a little different. You notice what's happening here? The motoric is the piece, especially for these last three, that are very different, right? So we have memory issues, we have concentration challenges running through them, we have the psychological challenges, the mood changes, the anxiety, the depression, etc., right? Throughout and increasing as they get later. Next slide. So when you look at the consequences now of this late diagnosis, right, as we've been going through them, there is faster cognitive decline. When it gets into the progression of the disease later, it's actually moving a little faster, right? The faster cognitive decline for Alzheimer's, worsening of motor symptoms with Parkinson's, as well as with the multiple sclerosis, the cognitive impairment. There's increased caregiver burden across the stages. There's difficulty with then managing these symptoms, managing the behaviors, because they're quite distressing, and they're quite distressing to the caregivers, to the individual. That's in some cases when there is still enough cognitive presence for them to recognize what is actually going on. And in some cases, that's not the case. A higher risk of complications are there for other issues, and there's just greater burden overall, emotional and financial, right? So it really brings to bear the importance of us looking at an early diagnosis, right? And recognizing the signs from an early stage, because once we get into this late stage, everything becomes just 100% more difficult, right? Next slide. So the benefits then of the early diagnosis, we want to look at before midlife. Early diagnosis, I saw a question and I'll just answer it here. Why is ADHD considered a neurodevelopmental disorder? It's considered that simply because it is from childhood, and there are neurological correlates with ADHD, right? So that's an important advancement in the field. We are not there yet here, but we would like to get there. At least I would like to get there, that they are being diagnosed, ADHD is being diagnosed from the neurological markers, right? Through fMRIs and PET scans and things like that, because there is a definite shift in how there's things that you can pick up on these scans, for example, to be able to identify if this person really has ADHD. Currently, we use a lot of behavioral markers, which are very important as well, in terms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, etc. But it is very much a neurological disorder, and it is in childhood. It starts in childhood. Part of the diagnosis must be starting before 7 years old. So that's why it's called a neurodevelopmental disorder. So early diagnosis allows for certain interventions, right, that can support in these areas: the psychological, the cognitive, the motor, the social, right, which then would improve long-term outcomes. We know that we may not be able to, we have not reached there yet, stop the disease process, but we can slow the disease process, right? So those interventions are very helpful, especially because they're strengthening the brain health, right? So during midlife, when we allow for interventions, early diagnosis again allows for interventions that slow, right? So in all cases, when it's beyond midlife, then it's also important. So early diagnosis is important regardless of when we are seeing these issues, right? And so consultation, get the information, if you're seeing things that you're not sure of, very important to get that done. Next slide. So the strategies, they look very similar to Prof's slide, right? Because they are, so healthy diet, right? A quality sleep, regular exercise. Sleep is so critical to our brain health. It is where we rejuvenate. It's where we're supposed to be able to then, all these cells do some repairs and things like that, right? We're regular exercise, we're getting certain hormones, certain neurotransmitters are being secreted when we're exercising regularly, apart from just kind of keeping the health of the whole body, right? Getting the muscles, getting the tissues, etc. Maintaining our social connections. This also has an indications in neurologically, right? When we're talking about things that when we're close and we're feeling bonded with people, we have a neurotransmitter hormone called oxytocin, and that's a really important hormone for attachment, right? So we're talking about these things again, they have a response at the brain level, at the cellular level. Yeah, that's really important for our overall health. Stress management. Yeah, because again, when we have overproduction of another hormone that we call cortisol, that hormone can cause some issues in attention and concentration, in decision making, in problem solving, if there's too much going on with that hormone. So stress management helps to and cortisol is our stress hormone. It helps to manage that. You're managing that again at the level of the brain at a cellular level, and being able to kind of to maximize your brain health, right? When you control these chronic conditions that we have, diabetes, and we know about these things, what we call them sugar and salt, and no, not salt, pressure, right? And high blood pressure and diabetes, these things all are having an impact on our brain health as well, in many different ways, as spin-offs from the conditions themselves, being able to manage it and the stress that can bring sometimes, and avoiding neurotoxins, right? So things that are not good for us. And there are ways in which we can, and everybody has their vices. So it's also, I think, very important to be realistic about how you deal with your vices, right? And so there are ways, like there's a recommendation, there's a specialist, brain health specialist, I'd call him. I forget his actual title right now, but he does a lot of work, on these kinds of things. And one of the things he says, like about caffeine, for example, Dr. Andrew Huberman is his name. And he says that, when you get up in the morning, there's a particular hormone, right, that allows us to kind of be alert. When you drink your caffeine, before you wake up, within 90 minutes of waking up, it actually suppresses that hormone and that neurotransmitter, and doesn't allow you to be as alert and as functional as you would like to be. You may not feel it so easily. So he just recommends, he's not saying let's cut out caffeine totally, but wait till 90 minutes after you wake up, then you drink your caffeine. And that helps to kind of, again, it doesn't impact us as negatively, right? So things like that we need to kind of check out and be aware of, and we can modify, doing what we can, because I'm a strong believer in, the lowest hanging fruit. Let's start slow, let's start small. What can we do today to just change and impact our brain health? A small thing, right? Brain training can be things like Sudoku. Who likes those things? Crossword puzzles, things like that you actually have to kind of utilize that. The front of our brain, our forehead, right? The prefrontal cortex, which is where our reasoning and our executive functioning, we call that's decision making, that's attention and concentration, that's organizing, that's, problem solving. That's the area of our brain that's largely responsible for that. When we kind of strengthen that part as well, it helps all around, right? So next slide, please. So very important that we maintain our brain health in these ways, right? So let's take a little bit look at this short video on brain training, and before we wrap up, go ahead.
Brain training is any activity that challenges the brain. So this could be crossword puzzles, Sudoku puzzles, or playing custom-made online brain training games. The theory behind brain training is use it or lose it, which is that the more you challenge your brain in skills like memory and thinking, the less likely you are to lose these abilities as you get older. So there's some evidence to suggest that this may be true, but we're still researching different brain training packages to find out whether they work. Online brain training is rapidly growing into a multi-million-pound industry, but there's still not enough research evidence to show what these brain training packages can do in the long term.
All right. So keep abreast, figure out what are the things that we need to do. And again, it may not be exactly the same for everybody. So let us let's take care of our brains. Please give thanks. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Dr. Morgan-Campbell. Presentation, and I'm sure a lot of people took away a lot of points and were writing assiduously with notes. I know I did. Right. Well, at this point, it's a great time I'm sure we have some questions because it was such an important topic. And I'm sure we have some questions. Arlene, is there any questions in the chat?
No questions in the Q&A. Let me see what's happening in the chat. Just a lot of congratulations.
You see, she was precise and on point.
There's not a question, but a comment about happy to see that the NHF has added ADHD to
I
their
saw
list.
that.
However, we think Alzheimer's should now be added as well.
I think so too. Yep.
Okay,
I would have had anxiety right there too. but yes, it's very good. It's very good progress.
There is a question here about vascular dementia. This type of dementia seems to be much more common in Jamaica than Alzheimer's disease. Do you have any comments on that, Doc?
I'm not aware of the numbers, but I will say that it is still a relevant type of dementia to look at. Why? Because vascular dementia can come from, for example, a stroke, right? And it can be a mild stroke and it can cause that. And vascular dementia is the deterioration in vascular dementia is a little different than Alzheimer's. So it moves in what we call like a stepwise direction. So you'll have like a drop. And then the person might be, at that level for a while, and then it drops, right, in terms of their deterioration. So it's a very relevant one to talk about. The symptoms are not different, but they move in a different way when it's vascular. And depending on where that is coming from, it can have different kinds of impacts, but the cognitive, the sensory, the psychological tend to be very similar.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Let me just add
Go
to what
ahead,
Dr.
Doc.
Kai Morgan said. I agree with everything she said. But as far as studies are concerned, and these studies were actually done by Professor Errol-Morrison, our first presenter, it would appear, at least based on those findings, that Alzheimer's actually tends to be the most common form of dementia in Jamaica, followed by vascular disease. So they're both quite prevalent and they're both very important, as Dr. Kai Morgan just said.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brian. Question here. I've noticed a high percentage of teachers have developed dementia. Is there a link between teaching and dementia?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of at all. I'm not aware of any. I don't know if anybody else is, but of any linkage.
Sorry, and there's another related question. Sorry, Kai.
Sure.
We could probably tie the two into one. The effects of studying on brain health.
I thought the person was joking, right? But I'll address those too. But I think that I actually think that teaching and studying to a particular level can be protective, right, of the brain because of what you're doing, in terms of delivering. But then I would say, because there are all kinds of mediating variables that we need to think about, right? Because if you're teaching in an environment, for example, that is very stressful, right? And you're burnt out, and year after year, you're burnt out, I can definitely see how that it could have that kind of impact. You know what I mean? Same thing for studying. If the studying that you're doing and is putting some remarkable stress on your system, right? That you're not coping with, that you're not managing, that you're not able to, that it just feels overwhelming, then I can see where it could be deleterious in any of those situations. But I don't know of any studies, and I wouldn't say that teaching just as a profession itself or studying just as an activity itself would be deleterious to your brain health.
Sorry, let me just add
I'd
to what
like
Dr.
to
Kai Morgan said. Again, I share the sentiment that she put forward, just based on studies that have been done. And like she said, there are many mediating factors. But generally, what studies suggest is that higher educational attainment is associated with a lower risk of dementia, for instance. And when dementia occurs, it's usually associated with a delayed onset, on average. Of course, like she said, there are other important factors that you have to look at, but I would tend to agree with how Dr. Campbell looks at it.
Dr. Kazaara, Dr. Brown Morgan here again. I have seen some studies that say that vascular dementia is really, really high in Jamaica. And in fact, it stands out in the whole Caribbean because of, I think it has to do with our NCDs. The rate of our hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemias, and the changes in the brain with decreased vascularity throughout the brain, and these micro thrombotic areas has resulted in really high levels of vascular dementia here in Jamaica. So I'd like to get some more specifics on that from you, if you can provide a little bit on that coming up, or later, if you could send something on that later, because I really, really do think that we need to stress control of our chronic diseases in which we as general practitioners can do, especially if we know that it will help to decrease this plague of dementia which we have in our communities. That's one thing I thought that I would like to say, but I've seen some figures which tended to show that the vascular dementia is really high in Jamaica, more so than the other communities, as our incidences of hypertension and diabetes, and so well higher than a lot of other Caribbean communities. So I just want to say that also. Thank you.
If I may, Dr. Brown Morgan, I put the study that Dr. Kazaara may have been talking about by Eldemire-Shearer et al. In the chat. But one thing we know, though, which might be important, is that that study was 2015. So maybe the face of it has changed, but it definitely, as you said, is worth investigation.
Yeah, so you're correct, Dr. Kai Morgan. That is the study I was referencing. Right now, that is the most robust objective study we have that looked at the different types of dementia. But as you rightly say, it's 2015, so perhaps a follow-up study could be done, and maybe we might see a difference when that follow-up study is done, because that was 10 years ago. But I was just referencing the same study that you shared.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Kai Morgan.
You're welcome.
I
Thank
think
you.
there have been some follow-up studies, though. You can check. There are other studies. Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. I
Okay.
think because of where we're doing on time right now,
Yes,
I think
thank
we're
you.
about 20 minutes late. I hand back over to Kellyanne, or at least Kelly, let me help you. Based on the agenda, I think we're now going to some sponsor presentations. Would that be
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we do
So
thank all of our
sponsorship.
sponsors for joining us and being on. Dr. Morgan, if you're able to go to the Q&A, there are 2 questions there. If you could just click on type answer and type out your answer so that the persons could get it, we'd really, really, really appreciate that.
Okay, no problem. We'll do.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So our sponsors for the next session are the National Health Fund, and Medding Pets Jamaica Limited. And we thank them both.
Did you know that the National Health Fund has added pap smear as a benefit on the NHF card program? Women aged 21 to 65 are eligible for a 1,300 subsidy for pap smears once every 3 years with the National Health Fund card. Additionally, high-risk women may qualify for a yearly subsidy for this crucial screening. It's important to note that existing NHF card members will automatically have the benefit added to their card. Doctors, you are invited to partner with the NHF on this new benefit. Join our network of providers to offer the NHF pap smear subsidy to qualified NHF card holders. For more information on how to register, call the Provider Relations Department at 876-906-1106 or download the application from our website at www.nhf.org.jm. Timely payments are a crucial part of our process. As such, approved claims are paid every week. Manual claims are not accepted by the NHF. Therefore, ensure your swipe device is enrolled with Advanced Integrated Systems, AIS, for smooth claims processing. Doctors are key partners of the NHF, and we look forward to strengthening our relationship with you when you become an NHF provider. The NHF is here for health. The NHF is here for you.
Greetings. My name is Sasha Dixon, and I'm a medical representative with Medimpex Jamaica Limited. Thank you for having me here today, presenting to you on enhancing cognitive vitality, the role of Stimuloton, Cavinton, and Palixid in lifelong brain health. Stimuloton is our brand of sertraline. It is offered in a 50 mg strength, and it is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Stimuloton is indicated for depression, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Stimuloton acts within the brain to increase the amount of neurotransmitter serotonin in the synaptic gap by inhibiting its reuptake. Dosage for depression and OCD is 50 mg once daily with food, and complete therapeutic effects can be seen after 2 to 4 weeks. For panic disorder treatment, in week 1, it's 25 mg once daily with food, and in the second week, 50 mg once daily with food. Complete therapeutic effects can be seen after 8 to 12 weeks. And there's a maximum allowed daily dosage of 200 mg. For post-traumatic stress disorder, the daily dose of 50 to 200 mg is what is required. Start with a smaller dose, and then it can be considered to increase it slowly as needed. Stimuloton can be used off-label for the treatment of premature ejaculation. It's required as 50 mg once daily for 6 weeks, and then when needed thereafter. As prophylaxis, it's 50 mg PRN 2 hours prior to sexual intercourse. No dosage adjustment is really necessary for Stimuloton, except for your hepatically impaired patients, where you may need either a lower dose or the usual dose is done with longer dosage intervals. Safety is not established in pregnancy, and Stimuloton is also found to be excreted in the breast milk. With Stimuloton, we're offering choice to your patients. Stimuloton retails at approximately $180 per tablet. It is covered by the NHF. So what this means is that the patient will pay approximately $135.86 per tablet after NHF coverage. Now let's talk about Palixid. This is our brand of donepezil hydrochloride, and we offer it in a 5 mg and 10 mg dosing. The therapeutic indication is for the treatment of mild to moderately severe Alzheimer's disease. Palixid is a cholinesterase inhibitor. It is a specific and reversible inhibitor of acetylcholinesterase, which is the predominant cholinesterase in the brain. Palixid is postulated to exert its therapeutic effect by enhancing cholinergic function through increased concentration of acetylcholine. Please note that there is no evidence that donepezil alters the course of the underlying dementing process. Palixid is well tolerated. It improves cognitive and functioning. There is a 38% reduction in functional decline. It improves behavior symptoms. And any adverse effects seen can be bradycardia, GI, muscle cramps, or fatigue. Dosage is simple. Initial dosage of 5 mg once daily in the evening before retiring for at least 1 month. After 1 month, then you'll assess the patient to see if the dosage needs to be increased to 10 mg. There's a maximum allowed dosing of 10 mg daily. For renally and hepatically impaired patients, same dosing is required as the clearance of the drug is not affected. And again, please note, Palixid is not recommended in children. As stated before, it's offered in a 5 and 10 mg presentation. Palixid will retail at approximately the 5 mg, approximately $11,186 per month, and the 10 mg, $12,684 per month. However, it is covered on the VEN list for your patients. So that is a very big plus. Now let's talk about Cavinton. This is our brand of vinpocetine, and it is offered as a 10 mg strength presentation. Cavinton is a semi-synthetic derivative of the alkaloid vincamine, which is derived from the plant Vinca minor, a member of the periwinkle family. It is a cerebral vasodilator which has neuroprotective and cognitive enhancing effects. It is used for the treatment of a wide range of cerebrovascular insufficiencies. Cavinton increases cerebral blood flow, cerebral microcirculation, cerebral metabolism, and cerebral functioning. Indications of Cavinton: post-ischemic stroke, for memory disorders, treatment of tinnitus and dizziness of the labyrinth origin, vertigo, as well as vascular dementia. Any contraindications concerning Cavinton? Not to be used in pregnancy, not to be used by nursing mothers, not to be used by patients who have a known allergic reaction to vinca alkaloids, not to be used in patients with severe ischemic heart disease, nor in severe arrhythmias, and especially not recommended for patients who have experienced a hemorrhagic stroke. Dosage for Cavinton, again, very simple and convenient. 1 tablet 3 times daily with food. There are no known drug interactions, and the drug can be safely administered in combination therapies. Minimal changes in prothrombin time when taken with warfarin. Any possible side effects that can be seen is transient hypotension and transient tachycardia. However, there are great benefits for prescribing Cavinton to your patients. There is a powerful cognitive enhancing that you will see in your patients, meaning it sharpens mental acuity and memory. Cavinton also improves cerebral blood flow. It is safe, and there is no systemic circulatory effects. And a very big thing, Covington is available on the JADEP. So roughly $40 per month is what your patient will pay. It is also covered by NHF at $94 per tablet. Thank you very much for having me today, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Hi, Kellyanne, are you there?
It's me now.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
over to
Okay.
you, Madalena.
Okay.
It's all yours now. Thank you to our sponsors. I'm
Yeah.
sure. So, Madalena, on to you.
Okay, thank
Everybody
you.
have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Sam, did you do the Medimpex as well? Sam, did you do
Yes, I
the
did. Yes, I did.
Okay,
That was
thank you.
Sasha from Medimpex.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so it's now on to our final presentation for today's program. And it's my honor and my pleasure to introduce to everyone the final speaker for today, who is Dr. Brian Kazaara, and we've heard him speak a little bit earlier on. He's a graduate of Campion College, a graduate of the University of the West Indies, where he earned his medical degree and completed Doctor of Medicine degree and residency in psychiatry. Currently a psychiatrist at Bellevue Hospital. And from just listening to him earlier on, I know he has a lot to share with us. So over to you, Dr. Kazaara.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me. Hold on, let me just put my camera on. Really been a pleasure being a part of this discussion up to this point.
Yeah.
Let me say that the two presenters that came before me, Professor Errol and Dr. Kai Morgan, both taught me. So for me, it's an honor to really be alongside them. And I'm hopeful that as I go through my presentation, they will feel that they did a good job in imparting the knowledge that they did impart on me during med school and beyond. I continue to learn from them, as I did with the presentation, or as I did from the presentations today, I should say. So the topic I was tasked with presenting on was the management of psycho-neurological disorders before, during, and beyond midlife. You know, Professor Errol-Shearer and Dr. Kai Morgan have already provided us with so much detail and so much nuance that when I thought of this presentation, I determined that my approach would be to kind of do a big picture approach when we look at the management of these disorders. So I'm not, for the sake of covering a vast amount of information, I may not go into all the details that they did, but thankfully they provided us with quite a lot of detail. So I think at the end of this, hopefully you'll just get a wholesome appreciation for brain disorders. All right, so firstly, let me start with the name, psycho-neurological disorders. And I think the term psycho-neurological disorder underscores that emotional, cognitive, behavioral, sensory, and motor functions are all influenced by brain health, which in fact is a major theme of Prof. Eldemire-Shearer's presentation. So for the remainder of our discussion today, I'm going to simplify things and just call them brain disorders. And what are common brain disorders in midlife? So a lot of them have been discussed today. Just to go over them again, we kind of split them into neurological and psychiatric categories oftentimes, but as Dr. Kai Morgan emphasized, the reality is there's a very clear and complex interplay between the two of them. So in terms of neurological conditions, broadly speaking, we have headache, and there are many different headache disorders, with migraine being among the more common one. You have stroke, of course. We have seizure. There are many different types of causes of seizure. We know epilepsy is a common cause, Parkinson's disease, and multiple sclerosis. And then when it comes to psychiatric disorders, of course, there's major depressive disorder, which tends to be the most common psychiatric disorder worldwide. Anxiety disorders, which are also very common as well. Substance use disorders,
And then Alzheimer's disease, a condition that we've talked a lot about today. So let's just do a quick background. We try and look at brain disease at large. So the brain is an organ, and like any other, or like most, like most organs, it's composed of tissue. Now, we know with major depressive disorder, there's evidence that indicates that there's inflammation at the level of the tissue, and that's a key factor in the development and progression of major depressive disorder. As a matter of fact, it has led some authors to say that depression is an inflammatory disease, and I'm quoting a study from Burke et al. Done in 2013. Another thing that was shown is that individuals with MDD have elevated levels of inflammatory markers in their blood, such as interleukins, tumor necrosis factors, and C-reactive protein. When it comes to substance use disorders, neuroimaging, which, things like CTs, MRIs, they show a clear link between severe forms of substance abuse and acquired brain injury, meaning that persons who abuse substances to an extreme extent actually develop injury to the brain that is actually detectable by neuroimaging. And some of the most common patterns we see is white matter damage, in particular in a part of the brain called the cerebellum, and also ischemic changes, which means that adequate oxygen isn't delivered to the tissues, and this can lead characteristic changes that can actually be seen when we do imaging. We know that strokes are characterized by ischemic changes as well, so very clear evidence for brain tissue damage when we look at both, when we look at these brain disorders at large. Brain dysfunction also comes in other forms. It can come in neurotransmitter imbalance. It can be shown in abnormal patterns of electrical discharge, which is what we see, for instance, in epilepsy, and alterations to brain structures, among other things. There's a very long list. This is by no means exhaustive. Now, let's take a look at the importance of early intervention. Dr. Kai Morgan did an excellent job of showing us the importance of early diagnosis. So I hope to continue and show the importance of early intervention. So we know that the brain shows a limited ability to repair itself. Increasingly, scientists are showing that the brain may actually have a greater capacity to repair itself than we had originally thought. But it is clear that still the ability to repair itself is limited. And as we've shown before, when we have these conditions, they are associated with real brain damage. So we're seeing an organ that's being damaged and doesn't necessarily have particularly great ability to repair itself. So and I think that's important when we look at early intervention, because what that tells us is we need to try and intervene as quickly as we can before further damage is done. Neurogenesis in certain areas of the adult brain suggests that neural stem cells may be used for structural brain repair, and this is a burgeoning area of research. Hopefully in the future, we might be able to devise new treatment methods that can help. But as it stands now, some of this is still experimental and cutting edge and not widely available. Now, thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain can dramatically reprogram itself after major damage. So that's just a bit of positive news. And this comes from Professor James Fassett. That's a bit of positive news because I don't want it to seem all doom and gloom. We do see persons who, despite experiencing significant brain damage or brain disorders, do in fact make improvements and sometimes can even return to baseline or very close to that. And that's due in part to neuroplasticity and other processes in the brain. So when I wanted to look at the importance of early intervention, I decided I'd look at Parkinson's disease as one case example. So to quote a study done in 2012, the most evident benefit of early intervention is a reduction in symptoms, particularly dyskinesia, these are very abnormal movement issues, to play it simple, and also a delay of levodopa initiation. Levodopa is one of the first-line treatments for Parkinson's disease. And what it shows is that when you intervene early, you may actually not have to use the medication as quickly as you otherwise would. For major depressive disorder, studies show that 70% of patients that are treated early, and the definition that this study used was within 1 month of onset, are actually able to achieve remission, which is great. That's 7 out of 10 patients being able to achieve remission when we institute early treatment. And early treatment for Depression doesn't necessarily only mean medication. It can mean talk therapy, it can mean other forms of treatment as well. So let's talk about slowing disease progression, right? So Alzheimer's disease is a condition characterized by progressive cognitive decline in areas such as memory and attention. And is characterized by loss of neurons and synapses in the cerebral cortex and certain subcortical regions. So again, we're seeing very clear evidence of damage to the tissue with brain disorders. As emphasized already, I just had to say it again because it's such an important message for all of us to take home with us after this webinar, that Alzheimer's disease is not a part of the normal aging process, right? It is a disease process. It's not something that's inevitable and has to happen to everyone. All right, so another slide there. But when looking at how we can slow disease progression, I went to the Alzheimer's Research Association. They have a great article. And I'll give you the name of the article so you guys can look it up. You guys can Google it, you'll find it. And really it just outlines 5 ways. And, you know, the reality is if you have been paying attention, Professor Errol-Shearer and Dr. Kai Morgan already spoke to these things. So this is really, at this point, just a revision of what they said already. You know, we know that if you can maintain a healthy diet, that goes a long way. Physical exercise. The American Heart Association talks about 150 minutes per week of moderate exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. But let's focus on the moderate exercise. You know, there are many different forms of exercise, so it can be kind of hard to quantify it or standardize that. But what the guidelines generally say is that if your heart rate seems to be increasing, and if you find that you're noticing that while you're exercising, it's a very rough and crude way of talking about moderate exercise. And it's recommended you do about 150 minutes. I know that sounds like a lot, but if you divide it over the course of 5 days, for instance, Monday to Friday, that would be 30 minutes a day. We know that focusing on heart and vascular health is very important to slowing the progression of Alzheimer's disease. We've already talked about that today. I actually included a little bit more on that in the coming slides. There's social engagement is also very, very important, and also mental stimulation. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because, like I said, the previous presenters did a great job of talking about that. We need to talk about the impact of general medical conditions on disease progression. So I looked at cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease. There was a study that was done in 2023. And what it told us was that cardiovascular disease showed an increased risk for all causes of dementia, right? There are various causes of dementia. Today, we've been talking about Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, but we know that there are other causes as well. But what we do know is cardiovascular disease does seem to show that it will have an increased risk for any form of dementia, regardless of which form it is. And then I actually did research Professor Errol-Morrison's paper for this presentation. So it's something I've been reading throughout the week. So just to quote it, dementia prevalence was about 5.9%, and this was a 2017 study. The Alzheimer's pattern, according to that study, accounted for 61.8%, and vascular dementia for 32.4%. However, it was noted by the authors that vascular disease was prominent in 45.5%, so almost half, really, of Alzheimer's cases had vascular disease on board as well, which really shouldn't surprise us. So, you know, again, perhaps, you know, there are some more recent studies that will say vascular dementia is the more common one. And I'm very, you know, I really would welcome that updating. But what we do know is whether it's Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, or any other form of dementia for that matter, vascular disease plays a huge role in the pathophysiology. It increases the risk, it slows disease progression. And so I absolutely agree with Dr. Morgan, or Dr. Brown-Morgan, I believe, Anna Brown-Morgan, in saying that we definitely have to address these vascular conditions and these other forms of non-communicable disease if we want to get control of brain disorders and, of course, dementia in any form that it comes. Also looked at sickle cell and major depressive disorder. And Dr. Kai Morgan actually did a study all the way back in 2014 that kind of looked at the relationship between sickle cell and major depression. She actually has done quite a few studies on sickle cell and major depression, collaborating with a lot of our researchers at the University of the West Indies. And kind of just to quote one of the things that came out of the study, they said disease severity was not a good predictor of depression in this study, actually. So which is kind of counterintuitive. You think, the more severe the condition, the higher the depression scores, but that relationship wasn't necessarily what was observed in the study. What was observed in the study, though, was that depression was found to correlate with positive and negative religious coping. So persons who had positive religious coping actually had lower depression scores, according to this study. And of course, those with negative religious coping were shown to have higher depression scores. And I thought that was interesting because it shows, Dr. Kai Morgan spoke about the role of mediators. It showed that mediators do play a huge role. So even as we look at the impact of general medical conditions on our brain and brain disorders, we also can't for 1 minute forget the other determinants of health, as has been emphasized by the previous speakers. So let's go into treatment options. Again, I didn't want to go into every single treatment options. The treatment options are quite varied, and it's going to depend on the specific patient in front of you. So this is just a very brief overview, guys. In no means is this exhaustive. When looking at major depressive disorder, we know the role of antidepressants. SSRIs tend to be the most frequently prescribed, but there are other agents as well. Same thing with anxiety disorders. So most anxiety disorders are treated with SSRIs. There are other options available. So for substance use disorders, a lot of times we will go with talk therapy and other treatment modalities first. But I just wanted to show an example of a pharmacological agent that is available in the local market, and that's bupropion, which we sometimes use for persons who might have tobacco use disorder. That's not its primary indication. Its primary indication is actually depression as well, but it has been shown to be effective in persons who have issues with tobacco use. And I can say personally, I found that in my own clinical practice. For Alzheimer's disease, anticholinesterases are the classic agents. They are the agents that are available in our market, but we know that there are more agents. They're agents with different mechanisms of action. There are even some pretty interesting cutting-edge agents that are really focusing on autoimmune mechanism of actions and even monoclonal antibodies. These aren't necessarily widely available just yet, but some are showing some promising signs, and hopefully they can come on board. And I do also want to just use this space to mention things like omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin E, and other things that we know have been shown to be very useful for brain health in general. So as I said, by no means is this an exhaustive list. When we look at treatment options for headache, analgesics that will deal with the pain. We also have triptans. For stroke, you can use anticoagulants or antiplatelets if we're trying to prevent future strokes. Again, neurologists could speak very eloquently on all the pharmacological options. I'm just emphasizing some of the ones we have locally available and that are widely used. For epilepsy, there's anticonvulsants. A lot of us will be familiar with Epilim. And then for Parkinson's disease, there's levodopa. We had previously discussed it. Tends to be one of the first-line agents for Parkinson's disease. So this was just a quick overview of some of the pharmacological options. And again, I wanted to emphasize options that are available to us in our market. But what is encouraging is that from my readings, several decades ago, our options for brain disorders, at least our pharmacological options, were quite limited, very, very limited. We now live in an age where there's so many more options available to deal with brain disorders, and we have to be thankful. It shows us the progress of science, and it shows us the cumulative work that we've been doing for these last decades to understand disease better. And again, like I said, for many of these conditions I'm naming, they're cutting edge things that are on the horizon. So, I just wanted to say we should be appreciative of that. We know that with a lot of these medications, there are issues with side effects. There are reasons why patients will struggle to tolerate them. And so, of course, there's still room for improvement, and we continue to work towards that end. In terms of non-pharmacological treatment options, once again, I don't think I'm introducing anything new to this audience this evening. exercise, adequate sleep, healthy dieting, socializing. You know, Professor Errol Morrison spoke a lot about adequate hydration, and I was happy. I'm a huge advocate for that. Certainly, it's very important, especially in our tropical climate. So that also is something that we can consider something to help. We know that adequate hydration actually improves mood and concentration, for instance. Stress management is a big one. Now, management of chronic medical conditions, just emphasizing that once again, because it's so important. Very happy to see us having an engaging discussion about it. And again, mental stimulation. So doing a lot of revision with this presentation, guys. What are the effects of brain disorders? So they can lead to impaired mobility, which can be particularly problematic for older adults, but even younger adults. You know, when younger adults are affected by impaired mobility, that is associated with an increased risk for mental illness. It's associated with an increased risk for cardiometabolic issues as well. It's associated with pain and discomfort, which of course is associated with mental illnesses at all levels, associated with reduced functionality. It can be associated with fatigue, sleep disturbances, appetite disturbances, and social isolation. That's also a big one. When persons have brain disorders, sometimes it's hard for family members to understand, community to understand, friends to understand. And so broadly speaking, whether it be a stroke, Parkinson's disease, maybe an anxiety disorder, persons who have brain disorders are shown to have higher rates of social isolation, and that's hugely problematic. Caregiver burnout. So when persons have brain disorders, sometimes the burden falls on relatives, falls on spouses, and a lot of times caregivers get burnt out. It's a frequent issue that we see in our society, and we see it across societies. And it is something that we always have to look at. So, you know, as healthcare providers, one of the things that we should look to do is take on a family health approach when treating persons with brain disorders. So we shouldn't look at the effect it has on the individual in front of us with the brain disorder, but also on the caregiver, because if the caregiver isn't in a position to effectively help and manage the patient, then you're going to see worse outcomes. And there's a lot of studies to back that. Occupational impairment, which again has huge spillover. You know, when you're no longer able to go to work as frequently as you would, or you may even lose your job, that affects the family from a financial point of view. It affects the individual. And of course, we know that when persons have trouble with finances, it oftentimes affects their general health as well, both physical and mental. So that's also something that we need to look at, and it's a significant part of the burden of brain disorders. Let's talk about rehabilitation. How do we try and address some of these long-standing impacts of brain disorder? So rehabilitation aims to restore function. So you want to get them as close as possible to how they were able to function before. Allow them to be able to work or learn or participate in society to the same extent that they were able to do in the past. Improve the quality of life. That's a huge one, because even if they're functional, even if they're going to work, even if they're able to participate in, you know, community activities, it's also important that they themselves, their subjective well-being, how they feel, that's also something we have to take into account. And that's a part of rehabilitation. And then finally, reintegrating them into society. As I would have indicated in the last slide, a lot of times persons with brain disorders are at particular risk for social isolation. And it can be very challenging after an extended period like that to just go right back into society. And so part of the job of rehabilitation is to see how we can get them back into society. Rehabilitation really should be multidisciplinary. We see the best outcomes when we have a multidisciplinary team of different specialists working at it. Because as we appreciate from all the presentations we've seen today and our broad discussion, brain disorders are affected by many, many things, and the impacts are also equally varied. So it would make sense that any rehabilitation team is multidisciplinary. You know, I'm really encouraged by the dialogue that we're having today. We're talking a lot about brain health. I don't know if we talked as much about brain health in this kind of all-encompassing way many decades ago. So I think that really is an indicator that we're on the right track. But when it comes to rehabilitation and treatment, we also need to make sure we're using this word a lot more frequently, multidisciplinary. You know, sometimes we may only think of the medical approach, or we may only think of the doctor, we may only think of the physiotherapist, we may only think of one particular person, but the importance of having a multidisciplinary team is quite clear. The studies are very robust. They've been done all over the world and repeated. So we know that we get better outcomes when we have that type of approach. And what are some of the aspects of rehabilitation? Now, there are many, many aspects, and I couldn't go through all of them today in our discussion. I think that'll be too long, and I know we're coming towards the end of this webinar, so I didn't want to bore you. Let me focus on some of the key ones. Physical therapy, that will help persons with movement, strength, balance, coordination. We know that persons who have stroke or Parkinson's disease, for instance, really struggle in these domains, and it affects them in every area of life. So physical therapy is paramount for many aspects of brain disorder, even with mental illness, by the way. We know that one of the things we talk about in mental illness is what we call psychomotor retardation, which is a symptom that's characterized by a reduction either in the speed or frequency of movement, but it's not necessarily due to a clear physical ailment, but as a result of psychological influences. But even in individuals like that, studies have shown physiotherapy can be useful. Occupational therapy is a big one as well. We don't have many occupational therapists in Jamaica. We need more. It allows for persons to gain or regain independence in daily activities, which is huge. It's really important. It really helps people with Alzheimer's disease and all forms of dementia. Speech and language therapists, again, another area that we need more in Jamaica. I think when I last spoke to a speech therapist, I think they told me there are 15 in Jamaica. That's certainly not enough. And the reality is that even amongst the 15, a lot of them have to just focus their time on children. But as we're having our discussion about midlife before, during and beyond, we know that these issues affect persons in every stage of life, including in the midlife. So we need more speech therapists. We certainly don't have enough. They're so important. They make a huge difference. Communication is so critical to many of the things we've discussed today. Of course, you can see how issues with communication could lead to social isolation, for instance, or occupational impairment, for instance. So having more speech and language therapists is a big thing. And I just really wanted to spend the time to acknowledge the important role of the speech and language therapists we have here in Jamaica and thank them. And hopefully we can continue to increase our cadre of speech and language therapists. Cognitive rehabilitation, focusing on areas such as memory, attention, and problem solving. Dr. Kai Morgan left us with a nice video on brain training. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And then finally, psychological therapy, looking at emotional and psychological challenges, because when persons do have those underlying issues, it will affect them in every domain of life as well. And I think we can appreciate that if persons can get some of these modalities, maybe all of them, but even if not all, some of these modalities as a part of their rehabilitation, they stand a better chance to do the three things we discussed, which is one, be able to be more functional, to have a better quality of life, and then finally, to be able to reintegrate back into their families, back into their communities. Prognosis. So what is the prognosis for brain disorders? I have to say it varies widely. We can appreciate that. I just gave you guys a very small list of brain disorders, right? Many of you know many more brain disorders. I just wanted to keep it simple. There's so many more brain disorders. And even amongst the small list that I've given you today, we know the prognosis will vary widely. Some of the prognosis depends on the type of brain disorder, absolutely, right? We know that depending on what brain disorder it is, the prognosis will vary, right? If it's a stroke versus if it's multiple sclerosis, that is going to make a difference. The existence of comorbid brain disorders is a big one, but not just, and I mentioned this just to say that, you can, oftentimes when someone has one brain disorder, they may have another one. You may have someone that has multiple neurological conditions, multiple psychiatric conditions. That's not uncommon. I'm sure most clinicians here can appreciate that. Also, the existence of comorbid general medical conditions. It's not on this slide, but it's still hugely important. That also affects prognosis. We already covered that ground. We looked at the role of cardiovascular disease and all forms of dementia. The severity of the condition as well. Absolutely, that plays a huge role. Also, the individual response to treatment, and that will vary from one person to the next, right? So that also is quite important. And that's why we say that we can't treat all patients the same, and we take them all at individual level. Factors that improve prognosis, again, I'm simplifying for the sake of our presentation today. Early intervention, just repeating that. Pre-morbid health status. And this really kind of catches.
Sorry to interrupt. We're
Sure.
over time. Please, if you could help us, just 2 more minutes.
Yeah. This is the second to last slide. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So pre-morbid health status. This really captures what Professor Errol-Morrison was saying. If we do a lot of things at all stages of life, it improves the prognosis, exercise and everything we've talked about, and social support. The greater the social support, the better the prognosis at large. So what are the implications for clinical practice? And this is my last slide. Well, we know brain health should be a priority at all stages of life. That's for sure. We know brain health should be promoted even in the absence of disease. We do not have to wait for someone to have a brain disorder to promote brain health. Let's do everything we can before the brain disorder to promote good brain health. Treating comorbid conditions does lead to better outcomes. Early intervention does lead to better outcomes. And then finally, rehabilitation and even treatment at large should be multidisciplinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian Kazaara. Your tutors must be so proud of you. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask everybody, yes, please send up all your lovely emojis and congratulating Dr. Kazaara at this time. And you can see the love going up and the handshakes going up, Dr. Kazaara. Can you see it?
Yes,
Dr.
I see it. I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
you did very, very well. We're very pleased with your presentation, but in the interest of time, we're going to move on now to the last set of sponsorship presentations, and then Dr. William Brown will take us through the final stages. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
For professionals, we understand that early detection and precise imaging are critical for effective diagnosis and treatment planning. At Apex Radiology, we provide cutting-edge imaging solutions to support your clinical decisions and enhance patient outcomes. Our MRI scans offer high-resolution imaging for detecting early signs of cognitive decline, stroke risk, and other neurodegenerative diseases, including dementia. With aging populations on the rise, accurate and timely diagnoses are essential for interventional strategies and improving quality of life. But neuroimaging is just one piece of the puzzle. Our whole-body low-dose CT scans provide comprehensive management for patients with multiple myeloma. For colorectal cancer screening, we offer CT colonoscopies, a non-invasive alternative for traditional methods, delivering detailed cross-sectional imaging to aid with accurate diagnosis and patient compliance. Additionally, our barium meal and swallow tests play a critical role in evaluating esophageal motility disorders, dysphagia, GERD, and other gastrointestinal conditions. Our ultrasound and mammography services also provide vital diagnostic insights for early detection of breast and abdominal pathologies. At Apex Radiology, we prioritize precision, efficiency, and patient-centered care. Our imaging services are designed to help you make informed decisions, ensuring earlier intervention and better outcomes for your patients. Call us today to find out more about our imaging solutions. Apex Radiology, the clear choice for all your diagnostic needs.
Dolphin Pharmacy, we are more than just a place to fill prescriptions. We are your trusted health partners, dedicated to providing personalized care for every patient. We understand that every patient's needs are unique. That's why we offer customized medication tailored to your specific health requirements. Our expert pharmacists can create compounded drugs, adjusting dosage forms and strengths to ensure you get the most effective treatment. At Dolphin Pharmacy, we take pride in dispensing medication according to your doctor's prescription with accuracy and care, ensuring you receive exactly what you need to support your health journey. We are also specialists in eye care medication, helping you find the right solutions for vision and eye health. Whether you need prescription drops or expert advice, we've got you covered. But our commitment goes beyond just medication. We promote a healthy lifestyle and support disease prevention with trusted advice and high-quality products to help you live well every day. Concerned about old or unused medication? Bring them to us for proper disposal. Safe medication disposal protects your health and the environment. Education is key to good health. We empower you to make conscious drug choices by providing clear, straightforward information about your medication and how to use them safely. Our team is always here to provide expert counseling on medication use, helping you understand side effects, proper usage, and how to get the best results. And it doesn't stop with prescriptions. Dolphin Pharmacy also offers a wide range of non-prescription products and health essentials, everything you need to support your well-being in one convenient place. Dolphin Pharmacy, where expert care meets personal attention. Your health is our priority.
Dr. Brown, over to you.
All right, thank you. I guess I've just about 5 minutes, my shortest summary ever. So we're looking at a summary. We look at we saw Prof summarizing a little bit of the brain as a center and control of our body and ourselves. He said 2 areas to look at as we age, the memory decreases and changes in mood and body functions become more evident. He spoke about some recent ideas on Elon Musk and also the Japanese experimentation so that we can age forever and not die. I'm just looking at that, you know. The advice he gave us for better brain health was running through all the speakers, active physically, socially active, stop worrying, less anxiety, relax, and through meditation, rest, and diet. Followed by Professor Errol, who says something like learning how to protect the brain vis-a-vis the risk factors. So the risk factors are there, but we have to learn to protect the brain. So the determinants of brain health include physical health, a healthy environment, safety and security. She mentioned learning and social connections and access to quality service. Yes, the brain may age and may heal itself, but the changes could be slow, and that we need to identify the normal versus the abnormal changes early. She spoke about menopause and male menopause and how it affects brain health. Factors affecting brain health also included physical health, mental, social connection, environmental toxins, psychological makeup, and traumatic brain injury. She says diseases that affect brain health will also affect aging. Strategies to minimize brain health and to remember that we do our regular checkups after age 45. I thought it was 40, but it says it's 45. And then we saw Dr. Morgan-Campbell, who spoke on neurological disorders impacting the the nervous system. She broke them into 2: biochemical, structural, and electrical, and all were based on our genetic makeup, infections, lifestyle, environment, and injuries. She made a link between mental and neurological well-being. And so the burden of these diseases could be economical, social, and stress, the stress response cycle. That was very interesting to hear that. And when can neurological orders be detected? They should be done early, for example, through certain markers like ADHD, and the time to diagnose could be even 20 years before it hits. So there's a late diagnosis and there's an early diagnosis, which has a better chance. Warning signs, she said, include headaches, tingling, certain feelings, lack of coordination, tremors, slurred speech, decline in vision, memory lapses. And she gave the example of the car keys. You may misplace your car key, which is normal, part of aging. But if you get the car keys in your hand and you don't know what they are for, then you have a problem. That's abnormal. She went on divided warning signs into motor, movement, sensory, for example, smell and hearing, cognitive, for example, memory loss, psychological, for example, anxiety, paranoia, and sleep disturbances. The consequence of late diagnosis could be cognitive decline or quick cognitive decline, worsening of Parkinson, complications that we may not be able to deal with, which leads to greater emotional and financial burden. And the solutions, as again echoed what Prof said at the beginning, sleep, diet, exercise, brain training, I heard that for the first time, brain training and neurotoxins, and also to control the non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, etc. Finally, Dr. Brian Kazaara came up and gave us a summary about neurological diseases, common brain disorders in midlife, for example, headaches, migraine, stroke, seizures, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. He had divided that in two. The common brain disorders in neuro and then psychiatric. So the psychiatric ones are MDD, the major depressive disorders, anxiety, sleep disorders, substance abuse disorder, and Alzheimer's. He said one or two things that struck me, for example, that depression is an inflammatory disorder. So it actually needs anti-inflammatories. And severe forms of substance abuse will lead to acquired brain injury, interesting. And the importance of early intervention, that the brain shows a limited, I repeat, ability to repair itself through neuroplasticity. And therefore, you need intervention to help the brain to restore itself. And it says in major depressive disorders, 70% can achieve remission if you start early. And in Parkinson, early diagnosis may delay initiation of medications. And that Alzheimer's disease is not a normal process of aging, it's very abnormal. And slowing Alzheimer's disease may mean the same things: diet, exercise, heart and vascular health, etc., social engagement, mental stimulation, and something which struck me, that he says religious coping can affect depression level. I don't know if it's higher or lower. That if you're a religious person, you might be able to deal better or worse with depression level. And that the treatment, he went through treatment, he mentioned a few things, antidepressants for substance abuse. And finally, he went on to rehab. He mentioned a few things about rehabilitation and early treatment. And he mentioned both pharmacological and non-pharmacological treatment before he ended up with the rehabilitation process. Thank you very much for a very spirited meeting and very enlightening and learning moment. Thank you. Back to you, Magdalena.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brown. Can you now do the vote of thanks and then followed by Morsi?
I think Anna Brown Morgan is going to say a closing remarks.
Okay.
Then vote of thanks very short, and vote of thanks very short, and closing prayers very short. So we can.
Okay, thank you. Whoever is next, please follow. Thank you.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Morsi. Thanks, Magdalena. Right. So, dear colleagues and friends, at this time, I'd like to share with you an overview of our first conference of this year, which has involved many months of Zoom meetings and a daily, very active chat in the planning. The mixture of physicians and laymen works very well for JMHS. Everyone has a role to play. Of note is our president, Dr. William Brown, whose dynamic personality many of our sponsors find very hard to resist. But in truth, Several other executive members were also responsible for contacting sponsors, and we are very, very grateful for their presence with us today. As we discussed our chosen theme, memorizing brain health capacity, and our choice of Professor Errol Morrison to open the webinar and bring greetings, it was clear why we chose him. He is an older gentleman of much charm and wit and extraordinary intelligence, whose wife, sadly, Dr. Faye Whitman Morrison, was one of the, has just recently passed. She was one of the founding members of our Midlife Society, and we miss her profoundly. As a group, we discussed our would-be speakers, so their relevance and indeed their excellent performance was what we expected. Then we discussed how to appeal to our membership and how to indeed try to expand the amount of people who would spend some time with us today, and how to get people to register and invite new people, please, to share with us. We all invited our friends and colleagues and shared widely and asked them to share also. And we have been rewarded with a significant attendance presence today. We are grateful that you could take the time to spend your Sunday afternoon with us. There were several other people who made this day happen, who are part of our team. One such person is Sam, who provided the Zoom platform and who sent out the notices at intervals to your computers. Another is Marcy, our executive secretary. If I have one message, it is that if you're not a member, please join with us, become a member. It will be a learning experience, whether you are an active member or a quiet member. This is a group which gives support, emotional support and other support to our membership. And we also provide, at this time, financial advice and some counseling advice, and we're also working on discounts that you can get through membership here. Of course, your attendance to these webinars is always discounted if you are a member. And the membership fees and so will be shared shortly in the chat. So just thank you all again. I just thought I would add, Puff, how very, very much we appreciated your dynamism in the planning of this webinar.
Morrissey, it's over to you, Morrissey.
Today marks the first of a new series of JMHS webinars for 2025, and we are delighted that you took the time from your busy schedule to join us as we focused on the theme, Maximizing My Brain Health / Capacity Before, During, and Beyond Midlife. This topic was also focused on dementia, a sickness that is feared by midlifers. Thanks to JMHS member Mr. Alton Lawrence, who offered the opening prayers. Professor Errol Morrison, thank you for adeptly performing the official opening of this webinar symposium. Your greetings and commendations and highlights of the causes and addressing the theme are warmly appreciated. Thanks to our committed and ambidextrous president, Dr. William Brown, who was very impactful in his welcoming address. Sincere appreciation is extended to our distinguished webinar speakers who delved into the various aspects of the theme and provided us with valuable educational information. To our moderators, for their efficient service and expertise. Our invaluable dedicated sponsors and partners, Bioprist Pharmaceuticals, or platinum sponsors, Abbott Nutrition Servicare Distributors, Pharma Science, MedImpex Jamaica Limited, Dolphin Pharmacy, Apex Radiology, Natural Health Fund, Nationwide 90 FM, who sponsored our advertising in the electronic media and offered us an interview on their radio program, the Jamaica Observer Limited, for their continued contribution to the JMHS in the print media, RGR Communications for hosting an interview on the subject on their radio program Hotline, Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, host of Pioneer Health on Power 106 FM, for also granting the JMHS team a slot on her program. Thanks to our dynamic organizing committee who worked assiduously to ensure this webinar's success. To Oldgate Solutions, our IT webinar specialists, for their continued exemplary, dedicated, and professional online services to the JMHS. Appreciation to Dr. William Brown for his well-presented summary, and Dr. Anna J. Brown Morgan for her closing remarks. The webinar could not conclude without gratitude to God for his presence and guidance, and I will offer the closing prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely hope you will join us at JMHS's second webinar on June 29, 2025, when we will focus on living your best health at midlife and beyond. May God's divine protection and glorious blessings be over you and your families. Shalom.